Welcome in, wrestling fans. We are back for another edition of the PA Power Hour-ish. I say ish because our last two shows have went way over an hour. So buckle up, grab your brackets. I hope you print it out because paper brackets are the best. Sit down, grab a cold drink if you want, and relax because Mitch, Rupert, and I are going to take you through the Class AA state tournament that happens in 2 days now. It's Tuesday. It's hard to believe it's Tuesday already, Mitch. I kind of feel like I'm down in my quote studio, and I don't feel like I've left. It's almost like a little bit of a prison. I love talking wrestling. Don't get me wrong, but I haven't been let out a whole lot.
I'll tell you what, if it wasn't for your little one, your wife might lock you in there. At this point, she's probably getting used to you not being around and maybe enjoying the solace at some point, So I don't know. Just
yeah, if it wasn't for the fact that we have a 1-year-old, last year at this time was insane because he was a week old, and I'm trying to do shows after every round and stuff. It was a lot of fun. But like I told Mark Byers at the PIAA today, it actually, from a media perspective, it was really nice to have it broken up between 106 to 145, only AA, and then AAA, same weight, and it was just. It's a scramble when you're looking at trying to cover the state tournament. So we've already talked about, we had Tom Hausnick and Dustin Hawkinsmith. Dustin was wearing his Jurassic Park shirt. I have a D4 wrestling pick shirt on, so that's pretty cool. We talked about the AAA state tournament, broke it all down, guys to watch, maybe some surprises, potentially early round matchups. So Mitch, Rupert, and I are going to do the same thing, but this time in AA. So we don't have much time to chit-chat. Let's just get right into it, Mitch, and start at 106 pounds. At the top of the bracket, you see Louis Gill from Hickory. He's your top seed. He's a returning state champion. His only loss on the season was when he wrestled up at 120 pounds. Freshman from West Perry, Jackson Rush, pinned him, actually. He was winning in that match, so not a whole lot of blemishes on his record this year. He won a Powerade title, beat Aiden Smith from Notre Dame GP. Now, I look at this bracket and I see that happening right away. That's a number 1 versus number 3 in the state currently. We just updated our AA state rankings about an hour ago, and we are now ranking top 30. So every year we try to rank more than the 25 heading into Hershey. So now you can see the top 30 wrestlers in every weight class, and you'll notice that Louis Gill is 1, Aiden Smith is 3, and they're likely to meet in that quarterfinal round. Mitch, they wrestled in the Powerade finals. It was a close match, but I just feel like Louis Gill, He's beaten Aiden Smith a handful of times in both folk style and freestyle. I just feel like he has sort of like a big brother thing on Aiden Smith. Like he just, no matter what, he can't be beat.
Yeah. So here's kind of the thing. Like, and I've said this to you before when we were out at the Ultimate Warrior. I think Louis Gill is a wrestler who is kind of the class of this weight class for sure. But I think he's a beatable wrestler. And when he got pinned at state duels by Jackson Rush from West Perry, that kind of sent the bells off. I still think he's the favorite here, but this bracket didn't do him any favors. I mean, to go Aiden Smith out of the gate, Easton Mullis had a really good season. Cole Hubert's a guy I've seen a couple times that I really like. Colton Wade from Sullivan County is a kid that we don't know a whole lot about, who I've seen the last couple weeks, and I really like what I've seen from him. So the bracket didn't do Louis Gill any favors here. He's going to earn this one, and I don't think he was in a position to kind of coast through this weight to begin with. The kid's a stud. Like, he's really good, but he's not kind of at that level where you can kind of coast through on your talent alone. He's going to have to win some tough matches, and now he's going to have to win some really tough matches at every step along the way.
Yeah, look at his state run last year. I mean, he had, he did not come in as the favorite, right?
Mm-hmm.
He beat, I believe, at least two guys that he lost to the week prior. He beat Cooper Hornack after losing to him. Louis Gill is, I know what you're saying. He's certainly has maybe some chinks in the armor, but I just feel like he's been so consistent throughout this year, wrestling a pretty tough schedule from Hickory. We got to see him up at the Ultimate War at Powerade. I was really impressed with him at Powerade because that was like, okay, you're a returning state champion, but you haven't wrestled that type of competition since last year at the state tournament. And actually, you probably haven't wrestled that type of competition until the Powerade. So I took a lot away from Powerade. Now, you look at Aiden Smith. He's had a good year after losing to Cole Hubert at the Beast of the East. He's come back and beat him, I think, like 7 times. He's wrestled him a whole bunch of times. Aiden Smith is going to be right there. I think that's going to be a really good match, obviously. Easton Mull and Cole Hubert is probably my favorite first-round match from 106. And Colton Wade, as you said, Sullivan County doesn't really wrestle a ton of teams that we see a whole lot. So is that 33-3 record really indicative of how good he is? I don't know. You got to see him a little bit more. What's the story on Colton Wade?
So I asked people all throughout the course of the season kind of what they thought of him because I just hadn't seen him. They don't go to a lot of big tournaments, and we had the same kind of concerns about Nate Higley over the course of his 4 years because he just never got to those kinds of tournaments where you really got a feel for him. If you look at his 3 losses, it's a 2-0 loss to Tyson Cook of West Scranton. He chased Brandon Wenzel from Montoursville up a weight class, and he got pinned there, and he got pinned by Luke Sirianni. So he has seen some tough matches. He hasn't won any of them. So that's kind of where we don't know what he really is. I think this 106 class from District 4 this year was a little down than what we've seen the last couple of years. There wasn't a Brandon Wenzel, I don't think, in that class in District 4 this year. I think Colton Wade's really good. Like, his skill set's really good. He didn't give up a point throughout districts or regionals. So what he's capable of doing is really good. We just don't know how it's going to match up with a Cole Hubert or an Easton Mull if he sees them in the second round and further down the line in the tournament.
And you look at Cole Hubert, he does a lot of pinning and he does a lot of winning, right? I was really impressed with him at the Beast of the East. He has not been able to get past the hump with Aiden Smith, but him and Mull, I think, should be a really good match. They both come in ranked top 7. Hubert comes in ranked 5. Mull is number 7. On the bottom half, I really like Aaron Seidel from Northern Lebanon. Just a guy we've been hearing about for years. I specifically have heard of him and seen him for at least the last 3 or 4 years, and he's everything that they hyped him up to be. Aaron Seidel is, and he just has had a good season. 45-1 on the season. He won the Southeast Regional, beating Aiden Smith in the finals, which was a great win for him. I think he needed that win to really propel him, especially into the state tournament. On the bottom half, though, I like Parker Senapal too. Parker Senapal from Burgettstown is one of the few sophomores in this weight. This is a very freshman deep weight class, and only a few non-sophomores or freshmen. We have a couple juniors in Gessner, Beatty, and Corey Walls, but for the most part, this is a very freshman-heavy bracket. And I look at Parker Senapal, and he's just been so consistent this year for Burgettstown. Burgettstown wrestled a really tough schedule. They were at the state team tournament. They were at all the tough tournaments. And I also like Seth Kolb, too, from Benton. That's another wrestler from your neck of the woods. But I like a Senapal Seidel semifinal with a shot to wrestle potentially Louis Gill in the finals.
I like that too, and I like that word that you keep using, consistency, because that's kind of what I look for when I go through results of these kids who I maybe haven't seen this year. And I got to see Parker Senapal a little bit down at state duels, I think, and you want to look at those results and see, is he consistently wrestling with good kids? Is he consistently beating good kids? And Aaron Seidel was somebody I was looking for here towards the end of into the postseason for those kind of signature wins to see where he's at. And I think he's got a win over Luke Willichell earlier this season. The last couple weeks he's beaten Major Lewis, Cole Hubert, Aiden Smith last week. And it's like, okay, now I got a good feel of who this kid is. And I'm right with you, Jeff. I like Senapal and Seidel in the semifinals. I like Seth Kolb a lot, but he's only about 99 pounds. If he grows into this weight class, he very much might be the class of it next year. He might be one of those sophomores that sticks around at 106, and he's going to be real dangerous if he grows into it.
You mentioned Major Lewis from Trinity. I really like Major Lewis. He was fourth out of the Southeast, which was a deep weight class, right? With guys like Seidel, Aiden Smith, and Cole Hubert. He was fourth out of there, but he's a junior, right? He's this is his first trip to the state tournament, but he already has 71 wins in his career, so he knows how to do a lot of winning. I like him in that we'll call it pigtail match there with Darlington. And I think he and Sandoval is going to be one to watch in that first round. Now, we can't say for sure that it's going to happen, but if it does, I think that's one to watch because you got two guys that are looking to – I think the winner there gets to the semifinals. I see that happening. Seidel, I keep on forgetting that he beat Luke Willishell at the King of the Mountain. And Willishell has just been on a roll this year. I mean, his only losses are to Seidel and Nathan Desmond. He's right there, and Seidel just having that freshman phenom kind of next to him. I just feel like he's poised for a good tournament here. I would not be surprised to see him in the finals. I wouldn't be surprised to see him win it, Mitch, to be honest with you. It's just you got to be there's a lot a state champion that was a good friend of mine told me one time. He said, you know what, Jeff, there's a lot of luck that goes into winning a state title. You got to feel right, you got to sleep good. There's so many things that can go wrong, and but I do think Aaron Seidel, if everything goes his way, I do expect him to be battling for a top 3 finish, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. And Major Lewis is one of the few kids in those pigtail matches throughout the entire AA field that you feel like can make a run to a high spot on the podium. It's so difficult to come out of that pigtail round and find your way just onto the podium. But he's a kid with enough talent that you think he can throw an upset somewhere along the way. And if you're talking about him in that 5th, 6th place match towards the end of the weekend, I wouldn't be the least bit shocked because, like you said, that Southeast region is really deep here at 106. That's going to be an interesting first round matchup there, I think, because I think Major Lewis will get through Jack Darlington there and get that matchup with Senepal. And like you said, that's probably the winner there probably goes to the semifinals. But I really do like Seidel. I think he's got, he's just shown where he's at. I'd probably pick him to come out of that bottom half and go up against Louis Gill, and then you can kind of flip a coin between those two.
I think I selfishly, I'd like to see that match happen for a variety of reasons. So let's move up to 113 pounds, Mitch, where the wheels just they're gone. We're running away. It's gone. Gavin Bradley, Brandon Wenzel, but that's not even where that is only the tip of the iceberg. Okay. And Mitch, I didn't wear a hat tonight specifically for you, so you can see I don't have a ponytail. I know you believe I have a ponytail.
I'm guessing you're like green screening it somehow. So
I'm not green screening it. It's
okay.
Look, it's not there. Okay, just beautiful, just a beautiful head of hair. I can't wear a hat on the floor of the Giant Center. You know that. That's the rule. So I will be rocking this hair for you in Hershey. 113 is going to be rocking the arena, okay? So we got Gavin Bradley, 3-time state medalist. Last year was a runner-up to Jaden Pepe. He's on the top by virtue of the fact he beat Brandon Wenzel from Montoursville, who 2 years ago was a state champion. Last year was 3rd in the state. They flip-flopped. So Wenzel beat him in the district tournament. Bradley got some revenge in the regional tournament. Again, just the tip of the iceberg. Let's look at the top half. You got Jack Cazales from Quaker Valley, who I'm a big fan of, just hasn't wrestled his normal self in the postseason. Some things going on in his life that just, again, like I just mentioned at 106, things got to be perfect, right? So if something's going on that distracts you, it's going to affect your wrestling. Weston Pisarczyk from Brockway, another sophomore. Both these guys are highly ranked, and both these guys have been, I believe, top 10 all year. Pisarczyk's currently number 7 right now. Jack Gonzalez comes in at number 11. I like this matchup. Both these guys were, quote, state qualifiers last year. Neither one of them were able to get onto the podium. But that's, again, only the quadrant at the top. And let's not forget Mason McClendon from Susquehanna, also a junior who I really like. He comes in ranked number 9th in the state, 2-time state qualifier. This is his 3rd trip to the state tournament. That is just the first quadrant, right? That's just the first one there. If you go down below that, you got Lucas Five from Baltimore area, another tough sophomore, another guy who last year was a state qualifier, didn't get to Hershey for the medals, but he has Jacob Carfley from Kerwinsville, a senior, one of the only seniors in this weight. Him and his regional partner, Hunter Robeson, are also seniors, along with Devin Jackson as well. But I like that matchup. I think Phi has shown to be pretty consistent, finishing second. He beat Cazales in the Southwest Regional Tournament, but probably one of my favorite wrestlers as a freshman, and really just throughout this offseason coming up through. He was a medalist, All-American in Fargo. Gage Botero from Faith Christian Academy, 41-6, Mitch. He's been so impressive to me this year as a freshman, wrestling just a gauntlet of a schedule. Powerade, Escape the Rock, team duels, and he's been asked to go up to 120 a whole heck of a lot for the team, and he's performed at a high level there. I like Gage Botero to come out to the semifinals. I would rather be on that top half away from, or on the bottom half away from Bradley and Botero, and take my chances in the bottom half. Mitch, just looking at this top half, what are your feelings and thoughts, and are you triggered as much as I am?
Well, first and foremost, this might be my, as I went down through it, this might be my favorite bracket in the whole field, just because it furthers my argument that I hate how we seed the state tournament. By the way, say hi to Claudia. She's back there jumping on.
I see Claudia back there. Yeah. She's having a good time.
Yeah, she has some thoughts about the 138 bracket, and yes, she's wearing a diaper because she's 15 years old and she has bladder control issues. But
God
I love
bless
Claudia.
You.
Yeah, she's my favorite. This is my favorite weight class here, and for the reasons that you just went over, like, how does this happen? Like, yeah. Why does this have to happen? So my mindset has changed. Before I get into the individuals of this, my mindset has changed on brackets and how we see the state tournament over the course of the years. This is the Pennsylvania State Tournament. I don't care if it's AA or AAA. Tough matches are going to happen at every round, the first round, the quarterfinals. So I don't get as worked up about it anymore. But it always leads me into the question, are we trying to figure out who the best kid is, or are we just trying to crown a champion? And that's where my problem is in these brackets, and when they're not evenly distributed, they're not seeded the whole way through. That's where my problems come in. That's a talk for another day. But the top half of this bracket is so much fun because I just don't know. You can guess. I love Gavin Bradley. I've watched Gavin Bradley for 4 years now. This kid, I mean, if there was ever an Energizer Bunny kid, it is Gavin Bradley. He is constantly pushing forward. He pushes that pace on you so hard. And if you don't make an adjustment, he's going to beat the ever-loving crap out of you, and he's never going to smile while he does it, because that's just what he does. I love to watch this kid wrestle. At the same part, Jack Cazales, as you mentioned, really good kid who, like you said, just probably hasn't lived up to what he wanted to do this year. Mason McClendon's a stud. Weston Pisarchik's a kid I've been hearing about all year. Lucas Phi is a kid I've seen a couple times this year. Had a great match with Devin Jackson in the finals at the Trojan Wars. Gage Botero is like, you were basically wearing a Gage Botero singlet down at state duels.
I was.
Because you can't wear a guy's jersey in wrestling, so you were wearing his singlet down
Big
there.
Fan.
He's just awesome. Like, you hear about these kids. I read about them coming in on the top incoming freshmen that you do, but to see them up close and to see them in person and to watch the level of technique and the fearlessness that kind of goes with it being a freshman, it's really fun to see displayed. It's such a cliche to say it, but whoever shows up on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, that's who's going to win. Because if you don't show up for one round, you're done. Like, you're just going to get knocked out of championship contention because this bracket's too good.
My gut tells me we're going to see a Bradley Botero semifinal on the top half. That's just my gut. But again, that's a lot that can happen between now and that time. But that's only the top half. The bottom half is just as bonkers, if not more. Okay. Hunter Robeson from Sagertown, a senior. I feel like he's been around forever because he kind of has. He's bounced around from different schools, and he's always been in the mix. Last year, I just looked at some of his results from last year. He beat Louis Gill twice, and then lost to him at the state tournament. So we know he was coming in looking to win a state title. Beat Landon Bainey, lost in sudden victory to Brandon Wenzel. He is a guy who last year fell a little bit short of his goals of finishing top 3, top 1 in the state. You look at what Brandon Wenzel was able to do. He had that sophomore slump, if you can call it that. As a returning state champion, that's a hard thing to do. It's hard to repeat. I mean, a lot of times freshmen that win a state title, they lose in their sophomore year and they win their junior and senior year because it's really hard to come back and win a second time, especially as a sophomore. Brandon Wenzel finished third, was cutting pretty hard down to 106, but I think ultimately it just wasn't his year. This year, on the other hand, he's looked great. We had him at the True Power card, lost to Tyler Chappell, then lost to Tyler Chappell again in the third and fourth place match at Powerade. This year has beaten Gavin Bradley, lost to him last week. He's got a good first-round matchup, though. Aiden Grogg from Saucon Valley, a guy I've been really impressed with. Not one of the freshmen from Saucon Valley that really jumps out at you because you have guys like Cole Hubert, you have Jared Roan, you have some other guys that are looking to make a name. Aiden Grogg was just kind of the guy like, hey, I'm going to be good, but here he is now sitting, third out of the Southeast region, a pretty tough one. And Devin Jackson's there. Devin Jackson, much like Hunter Robeson, has been there before. He's earned a state medal before. We know Devin Jackson's story. We know what he's about. And I was impressed with Gage Botero, as you mentioned, wearing his singlet. I was wearing, I was cheering for him. No, I wasn't cheering. We don't cheer from the media section, Mitch. I was impressed with him beating Devin Jackson. And that's not even to mention Landon Bainey from West Branch, 37-1 on the season. My gosh, it's a wild bracket. Last year, Robeson and Bainey wrestled in the state tournament, in the super region. Yeah, no, they wrestled in both the super region and the state tournament. He beat Bainey twice in that. He beat him 6-3 in the super region and then 3-1 in the state tournament. So Bainey is probably looking at, hey, let me just take it one match at a time. But I would love to see Hunter Robeson again to avenge that loss. But I'm less confident on who to pick here for the semifinals on the bottom half, Mitch, because again, I could see legitimately Hunter Robeson, Wenzel, Devin Jackson, Landon Bainey, all making a push to get to the semifinals and the finals.
I'm with you 100%, Jeff, and you didn't even mention Brock Holderbaum, who comes from a really good wrestling family there at Chestnut Ridge, and we know how good that program is and how they churn kids out. From probably the end of the regular season, I really thought this was going to be a Gavin Bradley, Brandon Wenzel 3 weeks in a row kind of thing, districts, regionals, and states, and in the state, and see each other in the state finals. And but then the bracket gets thrown in front of you, and it's like that ain't a given. I'm a huge Brandon Wenzel fan. I think just about everybody knows that. I've talked to that kid a lot. He's always so open and honest with me about the things he's dealing with, that are going through his head. We've talked a lot about his weight management struggles last year. And, he said this year, I probably should have stayed at 113 last year and just been fat and happy. And I think his weight management plan is better this year. And I think he's ready to go, when after weigh-ins, when he has to make that cut. But that's still kind of a concern for me, is that first match right after cutting and making weight. So that's why the Aiden Grogg match maybe concerns me with him a little bit. But at the same time, too, I've seen him already this year right after that cutting weight and making weight being fine to go. I mean, he threw, I think, a major decision on Cooper Hornack out at the Powerade this year. So he's wrestling as well as I've ever seen him wrestle. And I covered his state title 2 years ago. But to go through Aiden Grogg first round and then have to run into Hunter Robeson, who he was in an overtime match with last year, and then to potentially come through Devin Jackson or Landon Bainey, probably on the bottom half of that, and then you'd have to go through Gavin Bradley. I mean, that is like
a gauntlet.
It really is, and it's not to the level of talking about Brian Courtney beating 3 returning state champions a few years ago, but that's what it feels like. It feels like that's kind of the gauntlet he'd have to run through. Is he capable of doing it? He absolutely is capable of doing it. Is he capable of not meddling just because of the way the bracket's going to fall and who would be there in the bottom half and how good they are? Yeah. I mean, that's true with any of these guys. You know, one bad day, you can go 0-2, 1-2 and be done and not be on the podium, you know, and they're just as capable of winning a state title too. That's what makes this my favorite bracket. Who's going to come out of that bottom? I'd still put my money on Brandon Wenzel just because that's the kind of the kid I know, you know, and I know what he's capable of, but nothing's a given down here. And everybody knows Devin Jackson's story, but he's the X factor in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Because you have to have a plan in how you're going to wrestle him. Lucas Fye had a plan for the Trojan Wars final when he wrestled him, and he just stayed away. And he made Devin Jackson come into him. You know, he's got that long reach that he can get to, and that vice grip hands, man, that he's got. He latches onto an ankle. He doesn't let go of it. So you got to have a game plan when you go in to wrestle Devin Jackson, because you cannot wrestle him like you wrestle anybody else. You can't throw legs on him and ride on top the way you would other guys. And he knows that too. You know, he's the X factor in this whole thing. You got to have a plan to wrestle Devin Jackson.
Yeah, I agree you do. And I think that's why I was so impressed with Gage Bottero as a freshman, being able to beat him 4-0 after seeing what, you know, he beat Mason McClendon. He beat him 10-0. Devin Jackson did. He pinned him the week prior. I mean, he's just really looked good. He beat Brock Holderbaum 6-0. You know, he's good at what he does, right? He's really good. And I think when you look at the bracket, he is an X factor, and so is Landon Bainey. I think Landon Bainey has been under the quote radar a little bit. I think the talk of the tournament is, you know, are the guys Gavin Bradley, Brandon Wenzel. And I think Landon Bainey's been quietly gotten a lot better. He was on our national freestyle team up on the when we went to New York in the Wranglemania, and I was really impressed with how he's very mature. He's very mature, and I just think people tend to forget him, right? His only loss is to Nick Allison from Mifflin County, and everything else he's been pretty perfect on. So the 113 bracket, I agree with you, Mitch. I can't wait. I'm excited just to figure out, you know, Saturday night who are going to be the ones that we're crowning champions, because there's a lot of these guys that we just talked about. Some of them aren't even going to come away with a medal, and that's what I love about the state tournament.
Absolutely. That's the best part of this is trying to figure out how it's going to go, and knowing that no matter how many different ways you think about it, it's still going to go a way you didn't think about, because somebody didn't eat a good breakfast that morning. Somebody had a bad weight cut. Somebody didn't sleep well the night before. You talked about so much luck being involved. Somebody gets a bloody nose and has a plug shoved up there and can't breathe right in a tight match. You know, there's so many things that happen in a weight class that is this deep that you can't account for everything. If like I said, if I were putting money on it, which I never would, Gavin Bradley and Brandon Wenzel would be my pick. And I'm wrong far more often than I'm right. And I wouldn't expect anything less than to be wrong with that pick.
Well, I mean, you're better than the average person, I think, Mitch, but I agree. If my money, if I would say we would see a Gavin Bradley, Brandon Wenzel match, but that can be completely, we could see a Gage Bottero, Landon Bainey match in the finals. And that's what I love. That's what I love about 113.
You see Devin Jackson, Lucas Fye again. You could see Jack Cazales, if he puts it all together, wrestling Aiden Grock. Like there is no combination other than me against you that I don't see potentially happening. Number one, I can't make 106.
We're not in the same weight class.
Yeah, I haven't been able to make 106 since like
different classes. You know, double A, I'm triple A. I mean, yeah, you're right. That's not going to happen. But you know what is going to happen? We're going to see Jaden Pepe from Wyoming area come out and look to defend his state title, 41-0. Another guy who just quietly just been beating the crap out of guys, and he does it with a smile on his face. I love Jaden. He was also on our team up in New York for Wranglemania, and just a super nice kid, down to earth, and I really like him a lot. But he's going to have potentially a state runner-up in that quarterfinal round should they win. Cooper Hornack and Jaden Pepe both advance into it. I'm Jaden Pepe, he's wrestled Wyoming area. Who have they wrestled? I wouldn't say he's been tested, certainly like Cooper Hornack has, but I still think he's going to come out and take care of business. One guy that I was really impressed with last week in the Southeast Regional was Sean O'Toole from Archbishop Ryan. He's a guy who I remember him from being in AAA. Archbishop Ryan was in AAA, and he was close to getting out of the Northeast region from District 12. He had a good Southeast Regional tournament last week. Eric Howell from Lancaster Catholic came in with, I believe he was undefeated or one loss, and he was able to get a win over him. So him and Cooper Hornack should be a really good first-round matchup between O'Toole and Hornack. But also you look at Cohen Baney, and Eric Howell from Lancaster Catholic. Another one that I'm looking forward to. Baney's been really impressive this year. He beat Chris Vargo. You were there, Mitch, at the Ultimate Warrior tournament. That was a great match. These guys have wrestled, I think, 6 times, and I think the series is in favor of Vargo right now. Cohen Baney's another guy that I could see coming out to the semifinals and pushing a Jaden Pepe. They're both state medalists last year. But there's also an X factor, Cole Householder from Brookville, another guy who had a huge Northwest region. He gave Hunter Gold from Conneaut area his only defeat of the season. Hunter Gold came in undefeated, and freshman from Brookville, Cole Householder, say that 10 times, Mitch, I dare you, Householder, he beat him. So, I just don't know. And then let's throw in David Kennedy as well from Montoursville, who's not a bad freshman. 120, I mean, the top half, yes, you say Jaden Pepe is the guy, but he's got some pretty solid competition there, especially with guys like Cohen Baney and Householder.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with Jaden Pepe. Like and I wrote a story about this only a month and a half ago for PA Power Wrestling. Nobody's talking about this kid. He's the quietest, most unassuming returning state champion you've ever seen. The kid's 110-4 in his career. I mean, he's gone 3rd place at states, 1st place at states, and he's undefeated as a junior. One of the best in the state, and not a soul talks about him. And it's twofold, Jeff, to me. They don't get out to any big tournaments, and they don't go to any big dual meets. He's got some good wins this year. 6-2 over Gunnar Myers of Wallenpaupack, 3-1 over Bobby Gardner of South Williamsport. Yep. He's got a 3-1 win over Chase Burke. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot on his resume. But that's enough for me because I know how good he is. I've seen how good he is over the last 2 years. I just want to know that his skill set's sharpened enough that he's ready to go this weekend. But we're 3 weights in now, Jeff, and I'm wondering what is the benefit of being the top-seeded regional champion, because all 3 of these top-seeded regional champions are getting tough quarterfinals. It almost feels like there's no benefit to it. But Cooper Hornack, Jaden Pepe quarterfinal, that's must see. You got to see that, and I think it's pretty likely the winner of that ends up in the state final. I really like Cohen Baney. I've seen him a couple times this year, and I really like him. And that family's had a ton of success at Bald Eagle area. I saw Cole Householder a couple times, and you could see the skill sets there. I didn't think when I saw him, I didn't think he was quite ready for that step to be like that state semifinalist or whatnot. And I think even as a regional champ, I think he's going to get a really good match if he sees David Kennedy. David Kennedy is the son of Dave Kennedy, who was a state champ at Athens, 100-match winner, EWL champ at Bloomsburg University. And I really like what I've seen from David Kennedy this year. He's run into a tough kid in Brock Weiss the last couple weeks from Jersey Shore. So I think that'll be an interesting first-round match if that's what we see. But I really think it's Jaden Pepe, Cooper Hornack. The winner there is probably going to end up in the state final.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like Baney. I think is on that bottom quadrant there. I think he's very solid. I like his draw better than I like Jaden Pepe's.
Absolutely.
Let me just put it that
Absolutely.
way, right? If I'm Cohen Baney, I'm like, okay, let's go. I'll take out Eric Howell, then I'll take out a freshman or a junior there, and I'm on to the state semifinals with a chance to knock off the returning state champ. So agree, Pepe versus Hornak is not an easy matchup for either one of those wrestlers. And that's only top. If you go down the bottom, a guy named Adam Schweitzer from Notre Dame GP has been nothing but consistent for Notre Dame a year after coming away with a state medal. He was 7th. And prior to that, he had a losing record as a freshman. He was 2-3. As a sophomore, he was 5-1. Last year, he was 13-6 and ended up finishing 7th in the state. And what did he do this year? He beat Vinny Kilkiri. Everyone knows him. Super 32 champion, state champion, one of the best in the nation. Schweitzer said, not impressed. I'm going to beat you. Ross Dahl is also there. Ross Dahl is another one who finished 7th in the state last year as a junior. He's in that same area because he was 4th out the Southwest, a very deep Southwest. So we could see two seventh place medalists going at it in that first round, which would be great. Brock Weiss, as you mentioned, from Jersey Shore, a very tough sophomore. Chase Bell from Reynolds, he's just been up and down, man. 14 losses. I've seen a lot of those losses, and he's just, I feel like he just goes out and doesn't really take it too seriously. Just, hey, if I win, I win. If I lose, I lose. I talked to Casey Taylor a little bit about him up at the Ultimate Warrior, and he just kind of goes out and wrestles, and that's very beneficial when you're wrestling a really tough guy. But sometimes you need that edge. So I think that's a really good first round matchup. Hunter Gold, as I mentioned, took his first loss last week in the regional finals, and then Chase Burke from Benton, who last year was 7th in the state. So we have 3 guys here, all in the same bracket, all on the same side, that all finished 7th in the state last year. Obviously at different weights. But that's, to me, an interesting thing because you have one of those guys is going to finish higher than 7th this year, likely, right? Is it going to be Chase Burke? Is it going to be Adam Schweitzer or Ross Dahl? I don't know. But what I do know is Chris Vargo's down there, and Chris Vargo is just a tough SOB. There's something about him, man. I said this yesterday and wore up. He's just a tough little dude. And, I think he's going to grow up to be a really, really good wrestler. Not that he isn't already, but I just feel like he's got the frame for it. He's just physically, he's got it, right? Reminds me a little bit of Chance Marsteller a little bit. Just, you knew he had it, right? I like Chris Vargo, but he has that loss to Cohen Baney. They've split matches before. So, the bottom half, I lean towards Chris Vargo, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Schweitzer come out or Brock Weiss or even Chase Burke say, hey, I got something to say about that.
Yeah, you look at the 10 losses from Adam Schweitzer and you think, okay, well, I kind of expect that considering the kind of schedule that Notre Dame Green Pond wrestles and consider the 5 losses in the first 8 days of the season. He had 8 losses in the first month of the season. Now he's gotten into a point where he's run off 19 in a row. He's got that win over Kilcary, which you talked about. He's got a win over Chase Burke, Jacob Deischer. He avenged a loss to Cale McIntyre along the way there too. He seems like he's hit his groove, like he's figured out who he is, what he needs to do as a wrestler, and he's hit it at the right time. I really like Brock Weiss. Brock Weiss is a kid that we don't talk about probably on a state level because he's been blocked in a weight class last year that had Brandon Wetzel, Gavin Bradley, and Jaden Pepe in it. So he got blocked off there, didn't make the podium down at states, got the super regionals, but something clicked for him. He got pinned in the semifinals, sectionals by David Kennedy. Something clicked for him after that. He's found whatever it is he wants to do, and he's been in the finals the last 2 weeks. Won District 4, finished second to Pepe last week at regionals. I think he's finally found his confidence. He's got that signature win under his belt that he needed to maybe build that confidence. But I'm with you. I like Chris Vargo. I think he's a kid who kind of wrestles a college style.
Yeah.
He's a little more aggressive, and when he gets to that next level, I think he's really going to take off. But he's still pretty stinking good now. Even when I saw him in that loss to Cohen Baney, you can see what makes this kid really good. I would pick Vargo and Schweitzer chalk just to be in that semifinal, and again, then it's a toss-up. Whoever has the better day, the better 6 minutes at that point. But but those guys I think are just a little bit ahead of the rest of that bottom side of the bracket.
Yeah, I would agree. They've certainly separated themselves a little bit, right, with some signature wins. Ross Dahl to me is kind of like the X factor here. We know that Chestnut Ridge is just they're really good at wrestling, right? They're always competing. They're individually they're just solid and sound and just do a lot of little things right. So I look at Ross Dahl and I think, man, that's a like Schweitzer or like we talked about on the top half. I like Chase Burr's draw better than I like Adam Schweitzer's draw. Right, Adam Schweitzer getting Ross Dahl in that first round is a tough first round matchup. But again, when the Southwest region is stacked, right, with guys that have been to the medal stand before, you're going to run into them, right? I don't know really outside of those guys if there's anyone that's going to push anybody. I like David Kennedy as a freshman. Like you said, he had a big win over Weiss, but he's gotten beat up a little bit in the rest of the tournaments in districts and regionals, right? So and Eric Howe as well from Lancaster Catholic. That's a little bit of an inflated record. Lancaster Catholic, he didn't have a whole lot of competition, and we kind of knew that going into the regional tournament that, hey, he's going to have to earn his keep now. And Sean O'Toole's another guy who I'm like, that and Cooper Hornack, I'm telling you, don't. This is my catchphrase. Don't sleep on Sean O'Toole in that one, Mitch, because he can come out and beat people.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a good first round weight class. Like there's so many of these weight classes we get to in the first round. There's nothing really compelling, or maybe there's one match in there you expect a couple falls, but this is one where you're going to watch the whole way down, and it's going to have an effect on what happens Friday and Saturday on Thursday morning.
I feel like I need to switch to like D4 power. That's what it is. I'm going to change PA power to D4 power because that's all we got here is D4 power. You go up to 126 pounds. Scott Johnson, Mitch, you said it. I think that was you, right? Who said at the sectional tournament, where else can I go and see the top 3 ranked guys in the state in a section tournament? That reminds me of back where I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with Central Dauphin, Cumberland Valley, Big Spring. I feel like there was always guys that were top 10 in the state going at it. Probably why I wasn't as good as I wanted to be. But Scott Johnson has led throughout, right? He's been tested and he's passed every one of them, right? So I'm feeling pretty good about Scott Johnson. And let's not forget his match with Joey Fisher last year in the state finals, man. Joey Fisher's going to nationals, right? Or he's actually, I don't think he got an at-large, but he is competing at a high level, and Scott Johnson was there with him. So Scott Johnson's on the top half. You got Gunnar Gage from Cambridge Springs is also up there. Trevor Husick from Tussey Mountain, a senior that I really like a lot. JoJo Subishin from Fort LaBeouf, a sophomore, returning state medalist. Kobe Burkett of Chestnut Ridge, another Ridge kid that we are very familiar with. The X factor here for me is Chase Hantz from Faith Christian Academy. Father Tom Hantz, a legend out of District 1. Chase has been super impressive. I think maybe I should just wear a Faith Christian Academy Leatherman jacket. Like that's because I love all their guys, right?
I'm sure Ben Clymer could get you one.
I'm sure Ben could. I love Ben. I love RP Norley. I love Tom Hantz. So yeah, I mean, I'm essentially a mouthpiece for Faith Christian. Chase Hantz has been. We got to see him at the team tournament. He looked really good. I think he makes it out to the semifinals. He could have a potential rematch with Dylan Granaham from Benton. That could be a good match there. And if Gavin Suika with a fractured foot decides that he wants to tough it out, my God, I can't believe this kid is wrestling in the state tournament after everything he's been through injury-wise. But Scott Johnson, can you really bet against him?
So Scott Johnson, I think, would have been the favorite at 132. And he decided the week of sectionals, I'm going 26. And I asked him about his reasoning why, because, why not be big? Why not eat what you want? Be fat and happy, so to speak, up there at 132. And he said he realized early in the season, I think he took a 5-2 loss to Braden Bauer in the finals at the King of the Mountain from Williamsport. And he realized he was probably just a little undersized. Guys at 32 are going to be a little more lanky and give him some more problems. So he decided kind of then that, I really need to look at getting down to 26. He stayed 32 all year, didn't come down until it was the week of sectionals. And it's like, well, if he was the favorite at 32, he's got to be the favorite here at 26. But then he's in the same section with number 2 ranked Bobby Gardner of South Williamsport, number 3 ranked Caden Milheim of Warrior Run, and Dylan Granahan, we forget, finished 4th in that region. He's ranked 8th in the state
I know.
right now. I mean that he's faced the gauntlet over the last 3 weeks, and he's passed every test with flying colors. I know he wants to score more points, but it turns out Bobby Gardner and Caden Milheim are pretty good too, and that's probably why he's not scoring as many points as he wants to. I'm not betting against the kid. I did that last year. I think 2 or 3 weeks in a row, I picked Gable Strickland to beat him at districts, regionals, and maybe even super regionals. And he looks at me at super regional. He goes, I know you picked against me. And he goes, you can keep picking against me at the state tournament too, because it seems to be working out pretty well. I mean, this kid is supremely confident in what he's capable of, and the skill set backs it up, what he's capable of. I mean, he's answered the bell every time out this year. He's got that one loss to Braden Bauer. He's a 100-match winner already as a junior. He's been in the state finals before. There's nothing that's going to phase this kid. And if he's wrestling his game, I don't know that there's anybody in this weight class that's going to beat him.
Maybe you shouldn't pick him, because it sounds like when you don't pick him, he ends up winning. So for his sake, he's probably like, Mitch, don't pick me, right?
I didn't do picks last year for
right.
states, and that's probably what killed him. So
you look at the top half, and obviously Scott Johnson sticks out, right? I think he gets out. Trevor Husick and Gunnar Gage should be a good match. I think Husick wins that one. And again, Scott Johnson's accustomed to wrestling tough guys, right? He's been doing it for the last 3 weeks. So I definitely think he's going to get out to the semifinals and to the finals. But on that quadrant below them, Subishin, he just hasn't been the state medalist that we saw last year. He's had some close matches. He's had some good wins, but he just hasn't quite been like I thought he would as a sophomore after being a state medalist. Kobe Burkett and him should be a really good match. Chase Hans, though, let's not forget, he beat Granaham 3-1 in a good match at the state team tournament. He lost to Charlie Robeson from Conwell-Egan, lost to him 4-3, then beat him the next 2 weeks. He beat him in regionals, he beat him in districts. So I think Hans is just, quote, peaking at the right time, right? I think he's feeling pretty good, and I think he ends up getting out to the semifinals with a chance to knock off Scott Johnson. Now, on the bottom half, I don't know. Trent Hoover, I like Trent Hoover. Penn Cambria, I think I was at every single tournament they were in. I feel like I was just following them around, and I got to see Trent Hoover every step of the way. He's really good, but I haven't seen quite we'll call it like a signature win, if you will, to this point. But I think you look at where he's at in the bracket, I like his draw, but Caden Milheim from Warrior Run has been so good and so close. It's hard for me to pick against him. And let's not forget Charlie Robeson from Conwell-Egan, also down there. He's a returning state medalist as well. He's on the bottom half, and he gets a date with Bobby Gardner from South Williamsport. Again, another returning state medalist who's number 3 in the state right now. So if you look at the state rankings currently, Johnson's 1, Milheim is 2, Bobby Gardner is 3. So you got 2 of the top 3 all in the bottom from the same district. Chase Hans is 4, Robeson is 5, Hoover is 6. So that bottom half of that bracket is pretty heavy with Husick, Milheim, and Robeson, and not to mention Bobby Gardner, who's number 3. So I don't know. I really, this one stumped me a little bit, because I don't know. Do I just go with the guy who's been second the last couple weeks in Caden Milheim? He's been really consistent all year, but is that enough?
So this is an interesting situation where you run into every once in a while when you get a district that's just kind of this top heavy, where the better kids in this half of the bracket, I don't think are the ones coming in as the regional champions. I think the favorites in this half of the bracket are the guy like are a Caden Milheim, are a Charlie Robeson, a Bobby Gardner. I think those guys are probably the favorites on this half of the bracket, in part because they've run the gauntlet already. They know what a state level or a state quarterfinal level match is like, a state semifinal level match is like. And when you're wrestling Scott Johnson, you darn well know what a state finals match is like, because that guy's been there, and I'm expecting him to be there again. This is not unsimilar to last year when you had Gable Strickland, Scott
Yeah.
Johnson, and Gabe Gramley all at the same weight class and finished 2, 3, and 4 in the state behind Joey Fisher. I think this is a very similar thing, and my District 4 bias is coming through a little bit, I guess, but I don't expect a different kind of scenario. I think Scott Johnson, Bobby Gardner, and Caden Milheim are the three best kids in the state. I think Scott Johnson's a little ahead of everybody else. You know, Bobby Gardner and Caden Milheim can wrestle 10 times. It's going to be 5-5. I think it's that close with them. That's not to say nobody's going to go in there and beat them, you know, because this is the Pennsylvania State Tournament. That's what happens all the time here. But those guys, those regional champs, Trent Hoover and Mark Palmer, they got to be ready. You know, because they're probably not the favorites on this side of the bracket.
Yeah, Mark Palmer is the one that interests me. He comes in ranked number 9th in the state. Last year was 4th in region, missed a trip to the state tournament or the super region. He was a state qualifier as a freshman from Brockway. I can remember when he was a state qualifier that year. Didn't have a great sophomore year, and I didn't know if he was going to end up winning that match with JoJo Subishin, but he did, and he won a regional title. So to me, you get a good win in that opening round matchup, depending on who he gets. I'm feeling some momentum, some confidence, whether I get Gardner or Robeson, who, you know, the winner there, that's going to be a war between those two returning state medalists going at it in the first round. You know that those guys are going to be, you know, they're going to be thrown at it. I think Trent Hoover is another X factor to say, hey, can you show up in this big time match, and can you get a big win here? You know, he had that tough win over Husick from Tussey Mountain in the regional finals, but Trevor Husick was just a state qualifier, right? We're talking about guys who have state medals to their name already that are looking to propel themselves into the finals or semifinals of the state tournament. So, and as soon as Johnson went down to 26, I immediately thought, this is deja vu. Like, you literally just remade the bracket from last year with Gramley, Strickland, and Johnson. Like, I mean, that was my exact thought, because you have three guys that are all capable of finishing 1, 2, 3 or 2, 3, 4 in the state. So that's not District 4 bias, Mitch. That's just the cold hard facts.
I like to think so too, but you know, I know my biases come through. You know, we all have that bias of what we see most often. That's kind of the way we look at, and like, we don't even talk about the fact that weight class with Johnson, Strickland, and Gramley last year left Cole Bisco sitting at home. You know, that's how deep that weight class was. And yeah, I mean, I really like Bobby Gardner. He has helped turn the South Williamsport program around. Eric Gerber, Tyler Watts have done a fantastic job with that program in turning it around from really, you know, nothing good in sight coming. And in the last 8 years, they've turned this into a program that's one you have to reckon with. And they've gotten their state place winner in Bobby Gardner. But Bobby Gardner was the school's first state semifinalist, I think, since 1958 last year. You know, so he's helped put this program back on the map. And you know, good for them. That they've put in the work. They deserve that.
You talked about how loaded some of these brackets were. Think about this. Owen Reinsel, up at 132 pounds, who's the top seed there. He was 4th behind Brent Unger, Mason Gibson, and Gary Steen. I mean, you know, like, to me, you're like, I'm a state champ. I was 4th in that. You know, all three of them are nationally probably top 5, top 10.
He's the Ringo Starr of that.
He's the
weight class.
Perfect, great example. Most people probably won't get that. Yeah, Reinsel, he's been legitimate, right? And he's been that way his whole career. I've really got to see him a whole lot throughout his time at Brookville. Was a state qualifier, then 4th the last 2 years. He's on the top there. Christian Doy from Camp Hill, another guy that I like, but just hadn't had the tough matches that that he probably needed to get into the regional tournament. He finished third in the Southeast. Ethan Kolb, a guy you're familiar with from Benton, another guy with some state hardware to his name, finished seventh in the state twice before. So he's looking to not only get another medal, but improve upon that seventh place finish. You go down to the next quadrant, and you got Max Stein. I think it's Stein or Steen. It's Faith Christian Academy. I can't believe I don't know this by now, but he is a freshman in that class from Faith Christian Academy who's just been really solid this season and just gotten better as the year has gone on. And then Mason Barvitsky from Southern Columbia, a guy from District 4 who's in the same situation that we said at 126. It's a pretty deep region. He was third in that region. He's a returning state medalist. Last year, he was fifth in the state as a freshman. And then Callum Bowman from Chestnut Ridge, the enigma. Oh, my gosh. So Callum Bowman makes the state finals as a freshman. Last year has a slump, a sophomore slump. I'll call it that. He just didn't quite look like himself. He and Brandon Wenzel both struggled a little bit, right? And Bowman was a state qualifier, but didn't get back on the medal stand. This year, though, he has looked really sharp in 2022. So January on, he's been kind of unstoppable. And he won a tough Southwest region. So I like his draw there. But I also am if I'm him, a little nervous about if you're going to get one of those young studs with Barvitsky or Stein. I don't know necessarily who's going to come out of that one, but I know whoever it is, they're going to give Bowman all he can handle.
Absolutely. I mean, we forget how, excuse me, how close Callum Bowman was to a state title 2 years ago. I think he was up 2 points on Brandon Wenzel in the state final and just got tripped to his back for a 4-point move. He was so close to a state title that year. And that talent doesn't just leave you, you know. It might take a little while to find it, to sharpen it back up to where it was, but he's got that in him. But that's a great quarterfinal, whether it's Max Stein, Mason Barvitsky, that's a great quarterfinal there. Ethan Kolb is a kid who he took some losses at state duels to some really good competition down there. And for whatever reason, I don't know if it's gotten in his head a little bit, but he's just been so up and down since that moment. Big win last week, I think it was, beating Mason Barvitsky in the semifinals. I think that was one that'll kind of get him back on the right track. But Owen Reinsel, he's just steady Eddie, man.
Yeah.
You kind of can count on those 35-40 wins a year from him. I mean, he's going to beat the best kids. He's going to wrestle with the best kids. He's not going to back down from anybody. That's what I like about him. You know, we've said it so many times already, the consistency from Owen Reinsel. You know what you're going to get from him. Now we just need to see if he can win one of those big matches to get himself into the state final. We know he's capable. You know, like we said, he was the Ringo Star last year in a weight class that was a ton of fun to watch. And he was just kind of the odd man out on it. And a state 4th place finish is still pretty good. You know, now we just got to see if he can win that big one to get into the final.
It was fun for everyone, but probably Mason Gibson, who got pinned in the tilt in the finals. Shout out Mason Gibson.
Yeah, I'm sure he's glad you brought that up.
Mason's probably going to text me right now and be like, "What? Can you please stop?"
Mason, I'll point him out to you this weekend. If you're there, you can go beat him up then.
He would. I can guarantee you that. You look, and that's only the top. You look at the bottom, and it doesn't get any easier. You got Connor Heckman from Midwest, who's a returning state medalist, 7th last year in the state. Kyle McCullum from Beth Center, another guy who was 8th in the state last year. So 2 guys already with a state medal. Joey Senapal from Burgettstown. This is his 3rd trip to the state tournament, his first time looking for a state medal here. Brandon Kletos from Notre Dame GP. What has he done in his career? Well, let's see. 6th as a freshman, 3rd as a sophomore. Last year was a runner-up to Jackson Arrington. He's gotten better every year. He's gotten consistent. He's going to Rutgers. He's one of the best in the state. There's no doubt about it. He's been the same way since he was 12 years old when he was wrestling in the youth ranks. So I like him. He's also been steady Eddie. I think he comes out from that bottom half. I don't know if Joey Senapal has enough for him. I like Joey, and I think Joey's going to certainly be in that match should that happen. But I just think Kletos has done so much wrestling inside the Giant Center. It's almost like a second home for him. Connor Heckman, he won a tough Northeast region. I mean, you could have flipped a coin to say who was going to win the Northeast region, whether it was Kolb or Barvitsky or Heckman. He happened to be that guy that weekend. But he's going to have a damn tough road because I like Caldwell from Susquehanna. Him and Sipes are going to have a good match, but I think Caldwell wins that. That's not going to be an easy match for him. Then I think Kyle McCullum wins in that first match, and I think he ends up seeing Connor Heckman. So, again, you're going to have a guy wrestle some pretty tough competition before you even get to the semifinals. I don't know. I think we're going to have chalk here with Kletos and Reinsel meeting in the finals. That's just – I have a feeling. There's a song about that somewhere, but I have a feeling.
I'm the same way. I really like Connor Heckman. He wrestles too many close matches for my liking. He's comfortable in those matches. He's comfortable going to, tie break, ultimate tie break, and he's got the capability to win those matches. He doesn't panic, but I want to kind of see him blow out kids that he should blow out, and I don't see that enough. So he'll keep himself in the match, and I think if he gets to the point where he sees Brandon Kletos, I think that's where he can keep it a 1-point match, a 1-move match, and maybe he can find that move at the end. But I really like where Brandon Kletos' head is at. I talked to him after the match with Bethlehem Catholic because he had taken so many losses early on in the season, and it would have been easy, I think, for him to fold shop and say that it's not my year. So what? I'm going to Rutgers, whatever. But he used it to refocus himself, and I think it was that night he beat Colin Rath 1-0 that night in the dual meet, and it was like, okay, here's a kid who has taken the hardships of the first month of the season and said, this isn't good enough. I need to find a way to be better. And when Scott Johnson dropped down to 126, I thought this was going to be his weight class. It's not an easy road. I think it's chalk. I think it's him and Owen Reinsel in the finals, and I'd still pick Brandon Kletos as the favorite to win that finals matchup because I think his head is really in the right spot to go do that.
Well, I'll tell you who's not in the right spot. His name is Ryan Crookham from Saucon Valley, and he is not in the right part of the bracket. I'm like, what?
Yeah, Claudia's got some thoughts about that.
I bet Claudia does. Well, I got some thoughts. We're an hour in. We're only at 138, Mitch. I just saying that now because Tom Hausnick he needs to go to bed soon. Okay, you already got him in trouble on Sunday night. 138 to me is one of my favorite brackets. Connor Pierce is the best wrestler in Hershey that is not committed to a college. You heard it here first, college coaches. Connor Pierce from Harbor Creek is the best wrestler in Hershey that is not committed to a college. He's that damn good, and he just happens to be in a bracket with Ryan Crookham. I talked to Connor when Ryan came back. He was like, "Hey man, like really, you're gonna move Ryan Crookham ahead of me?" I'm like, "Dude, it's Ryan Crookham." He's like, and you know what he said? He said he breathes the same air I do. I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so badass!" Like he does. I remember junior high. We're wrestling Cumberland Valley. And it's a big match. I'm wrestling 75 pounds starting for junior high as a 7th grader. And my coach says to us, he's like, guys, they put their singlets on the same way you do, one leg at a time. And I'm thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Like, I wasn't motivated. And, of course, I went out and got pinned probably. But Connor Pierce is a guy that just has been so good for a really long time. 7th in the state as a freshman. Again, 7th as a sophomore. Last year was 4th in the state. But something happened over the summer where he just really improved. And look at this potential first-round match for him. Cole Bisco, a guy who was a state runner-up just, 3 years ago? And unfortunately for Cole, which I just found out today in talking to Jack Young, that Cole Bisco is a ref. He's a certified ref in Pennsylvania, which is so cool.
That doesn't shock me in the least bit.
No, it doesn't shock me at all. Cole's a freaking Boy Scout. I love him. He just committed to Air Force, so congratulations to Cole Bisco on also committing to the United States Air Force. He's potentially going to win that first match and have Connor Pierce, guys that, their freshman year, Pierce was 7th, Bisco was 2nd in the state. Bisco just hasn't gotten back to that form yet, and injuries have been his big thing, right? And I'm sure you'll talk about that. But that top half of the bracket, I like Coben Carper from Boiling Springs a lot. Him and Jameson Pokliembo, that's going to be one match you cannot miss. Coben Carper, it's hard for me to believe that Coben Carper is making his first trip to the state tournament because he's been so good for Boiling Springs. He wrestled Ryan Crookham tough in the team duels. Crookham made that gap a lot wider at the regional tournament. He finished second there. Ambrose Bonai from Central Valley, a guy probably nobody outside of the Whitfield knows of. He's really good, just hasn't quite had the exposure that some of the other guys that we've seen here have, like Bryson Vaughn from Notre Dame GP, who's been wrestling kind of just so consistently throughout his career, and especially this season. And then let's throw in a monkey wrench, Cameron Milheim from Warrior Run, a guy I'm super excited about. There's 2 seniors in this class that I want to see wrestle, Ryan Crookham and Connor Pierce, but there's 2 freshmen I would love to see go at it again, Cameron Milheim and Anthony Avensky from Wyoming area. It is just an absolute loaded bracket. Mitch, that top half, Connor Pierce is the guy, I think, but Milheim from Warrior Run, that boy can wrestle, just even as a freshman.
I'm partial to guys that are making history at schools that don't have a lot of wrestling history. You know, that's one of the things I always did as a writer is you have to put things into context. Wins are just wins without the context of why it's important. So when I was writing about Nate Higley for 4 years, that's a school that had never had a state place winner before until Nate Higley came on. And everything he did was the first time it ever happened at Sullivan County. Harbor Creek isn't a whole lot different. Connor Pierce is the only 3-time state place winner ever in Harbor Creek's history. Obviously, they've never had a 4-time state place winner. He's got a chance to do that. He's trying to be their first state champion since 1993. I think that's maybe the 1 or 2 state champions that they've ever had there. So I'm partial to guys that are trying to make history, and he's obviously taken the steps in the offseason to put himself in as good a position as he possibly can. It just so happens that 6 weeks ago, Ryan Crookham decided, hey, I'm going to wrestle this year now. You know, my knee's good, my hips good, whatever is good, I'm going to go wrestle. But this is a really fun half of the bracket. Like you mentioned Coben Carper. That's a kid I feel like I've been hearing about that has been a fixture in that lineup for a couple years. And I'm shocked that he hasn't been in the state tournament before because he's been on that level ever since I've seen him. I know Montoursville wrestled them in a pigtail match a few years ago at state duels where I think I saw him for the first time.
123 wins in his career. 123 wins as a senior. It never made it to state tournament. That's pretty impressive.
2-0 with Ryan Crookham down at state duels this year. Now I asked Tom Hausnick about that. I said, was it a 2-0 match or was it a 2-0 match? And it was a 2-0 match that Ryan Crookham was in control of the entire time. But that kid's going to be a factor. Like he's going to beat somebody that you probably don't expect him to beat this week. I'm convinced of that. Cameron Milheim, again, he's a guy we talked about for the first 6 weeks of the season. Look at all the people he's lost to, and look how close those losses were. Then all of a sudden, he got a big win. He beat Cole Bisco one day in a dual meet, and that was kind of the one where it felt like the light bulbs went off a little bit, you know, like, and he realized what he's capable of doing. And then he had the win over Cade Wernsberger a couple weeks ago in this, I think it was the sectional final, and then beat him again in the regional final last week too. This is a kid who is just scratching the surface of his capabilities. He's had a really good PJW career leading into this, so he's not an unknown commodity, but I think he's kind of hitting that level maybe a year before I thought he would. And that Warrior Run program is one that's on the rise, in part because of the whole Milheim family. Caden, now Cameron, Reagan's coming up through. I think in the next year or two, he's had a really good PJW career. That whole program is really on the rise, and I think you're going to see them at state duels within the next couple years. They've done a really nice job with that program.
Looking at the bottom half here, Mitch, Crookham is the guy that everyone wants to see, right? If you weren't at team duels, you probably haven't seen him yet, and he's the guy everyone wants to see. He's in a new singlet. He's been a year removed from winning a state title. Let's not forget his sophomore year, he was 50-1, right? 50-1. Only loss was Nick Bazakis. So Ryan Crookham has been, and oh, by the way, he was the first wrestler ever to win a Super 32 title as an eighth grader. He, we know what Ryan Crookham is capable of, and I think he's gotten better as the weeks have gone on, right? He's not the Ryan Crookham of 2019, 2020. I don't think he would admit that, but he is still pretty darn close, and he's getting better every single day. He clearly has been putting in the work. So to me, this is Crookham's weight, but it's not going to be easy, right? He's had close matches before at the state tournament. He was in a tiebreaker match with Ian Oswalt from Burrell one year. He's going to be tested. I really think the first round between Anthony Avensky of Wyoming area and Connor Saylor is a great first round matchup there. They come in ranked 5 and 6 in the state. Saylor coming in as a sixth place finisher last year in the state tournament. He's been pretty consistent all year. Had a few losses, lost to Carter Davis, as you can remember, like it was yesterday, I'm sure, at the Ultimate Warrior tournament. But Avensky is a guy who his older brother was a state champion. He's been really, really wrestling strong as a freshman, kind of like Cameron Milheim. But then you throw in Cade Wernsberger from Meadowbrook Christian, again, comes from lineage of success. And then Easton Toth from Forest Hills, another staple of that program who just he's overshadowed by Jackson Arrington. Easton Toth is his fourth time to state tournament. He's never earned a medal. So this is his fourth shot at a state medal, and I think he'll get it this year. But it's not going to be easy because if he wins his first match, he'll likely see Cade Werzenberger from Meadowbrook Christian, who last year was 6th in the state. So the bottom half, Crookham is the guy, but it's not going to be an easy road. If he sees Saylor or Avensky, tough match. Wernsberger or Toth, again, tough match. But I want to see Crookham and Pierce wrestle. That's it. That if there's a God, make that match happen.
So it's a shame. The bottom half of this bracket is Ryan Crookham and everybody else, and it's a shame because the bottom half of this bracket is really good.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. I really like Anthony Evanitsky. I've seen him a couple times this year, and he wrestled Connor Hare earlier in the year when he was up at 45, and it was pretty lopsided. We'll get into Connor here in a little bit and kind of what I think of him. I got a good comparison, I think, of the level Connor Hare is on. But I really like Evanitsky. Like, he's a super talented freshman. I was worried a little bit him coming in to the Northeast region last year, which is just District 4 and District 2, because, again, Wyoming area doesn't go to those big tournaments. They don't have any huge dual meets that are kind of must-see. They went down to Benton this year, which was good for them because they knew they needed that kind of match. And I thought Evanitsky could have something to say about how that Northeast region played out, and he did. He was a factor in that. I like Cade Wernsberger. I would love to see him just let his offense fly open, because when he's just moving and going and doing what feels right, he is really fun to watch, and he's really, really tough to beat. Now, as we're talking about this whole weight class, here's the thought that popped into my mind. This feels a little bit like, on a smaller scale, Austin DeSanto and Spencer Lee from a few years ago, where Ryan Crookham is kind of that force that nobody expects to be beaten, but he's not 100%. We know he's not the Ryan Crookham that he was the first 2 years of his career. Connor Pierce is that kid that we all know is really good, but he just hasn't quite gotten over that hump the way Austin DeSanto hadn't. And that's what this feels like to me. That's why I want to see this match in the final, because I think it could end up being really good.
Yeah, I'm triggered now that you brought up Spencer Lee and Austin DeSanto, but I'll let it slide. There I can see a little bit of similarities, right? It's certainly David versus Goliath, but Connor Pierce, man, like he's a goer. I really love his capabilities here. And Ryan is like you said, is not the same Ryan that we are accustomed to see, but I'd really like that match to happen. If I didn't say that already, I'd really like that match to happen. So if that could happen, that'd be great. You brought him up, and this is why I called it D4 Power Hour, because Connor Hare from Montgomery, 43-0. Connor Hare has just really, my gosh, ever since the Redemption Duel, which was hosted by yours truly, PA Power. When he beat Eric Alderfer from Faith Christian Academy, he's been on a tear. Has had a good summer, good preseason. In fact, he beat Connor Pierce on our card at True Power, the Battle of the Connors, and they're spelled differently. I still get it wrong, and Connor Pierce still gets mad at me. But those two wrestled in a really good match. I'd like to see that one again, too. Connor Hare has been so damn good this year. I just can't see anyone beating him. The problem is 145 on the top half is stacked. There's another guy there who is also undefeated. His name's Ty Watson from Penns Valley. He's only a sophomore, just like Connor Hare. So you have two guys that if you looked in the mirror, you'd see each other, right? They're just very identical. Similar styles, too, a little bit to a certain extent. Connor Hare is just he does all the little things and the basics right. You know, he just really does. Hare was 5th in state last year. Now, I like his chances, but he's probably going to see Jake Guilfoyle from Bishop McDevitt in that quarterfinal match. Guilfoyle comes in ranked number 7 in the state. He's been as high as, I believe, 3 or 4, if my memory serves me correctly. So he's going to be a tough out, no doubt. And then you have Evan Mag from Notre Dame Green Pond, another guy who's just been really consistent for Notre Dame, 5th in the state as a sophomore. Only a qualifier last year, but has gotten much better. And then Ty Watson. Ty Watson from Penns Valley, again, last year, he was only 8-5, Mitch, in a shortened COVID season where, District 6, he didn't get a ton of matches. And all he's done this year is win 37 matches without any losses. I like Ty Watson, but he's going to have a hell of a time getting past Connor Hare. I want to hear your comparison. Who do you compare Connor Hare to?
So, again, sticking with my District 4 bias, of course, the way I see Connor Hare's career kind of unfolding in front of my eyes reminds me a whole lot of Gavin Hoffman, a guy who just qualified for the national tournament out of Ohio State, 3-time state champ from Montoursville. Connor came in as a highly touted freshman, and I think was undefeated up until Super Regionals last year. Maybe he had taken one loss, and maybe he lost to Nate Higley in a dual meet, and ended up finishing, I think, what was kind of a disappointing 5th at the state tournament. He got into a part of the season where I think he ended up wrestling other people's matches. It was Dave Kreidler, maybe of Allentown Central Catholic, who beat him at Super Regionals. I don't remember who beat him at the state tournament last year, but got into wrestling other guys' matches, because when he goes at his pace, when he gets to his stuff on his feet, I don't think there's anybody in the bracket that's going to hang with him. I like Eric Alderfer. We'll talk about him when we get to the bottom half of this bracket. But I think Connor has taken that next step from the rest of the field, and we've seen that in the last 2 weeks, wrestling Caden Wagner from Lewisburg, and I think he put a major decision on him at the district tournament, won 10-4 last week. 39 of his 43 wins this year are bonus point. Now that counts 11 forfeits in there. There's only been 4 decisions all season. One was Andrew Christie, one was Caden Wagner in the Cumberland Valley tournament to kick off the season. One was last week with Caden Wagner, and then there was a wrestler from New York that I think was a 13-7 decision. So he's taken that next step, and Connor Hare has become the guy that I've heard about and I've talked to since he was like 10 years old, and seen him around his dad's teams at Muncie. And it's been fun to watch him progress to this level.
I'm not shocked by the comparison to Gavin Hoffman, because your District 4 bias, but also because Gavin Hoffman, very much like Connor Hare, came in as a superstar before he even stepped foot onto a mat as a high school freshman. And I think Connor was certainly disappointed last year. And you said he lost to Kreider. He actually lost him in the Super Region and then beat him in the state tournament. But if you remember, he lost to Ian Oswalt right out of the gate in ultimate tiebreaker. Yep. I can remember that because I was glued to that mat thinking, holy crap, like Connor Hare's going to knock him off. Because everyone expected an Ian Oswald and McMillan match again for the 3rd time. So Connor Hare has certainly shook off all of those things from his freshman year, and he's been so consistent. But again, you look at that bottom half, and it's still stacked. Carter Gill from Hickory has been, I mean, number one, he shed like 30 pounds. He's looking for his third state medal. He was 6th as a sophomore, 7th last year. He's on the bottom half. Noah Teeter from Forest Hills is also on the bottom half. He's a state medalist, was 7th as a sophomore. You got Caden Wagner, who's been number 2 in the state behind Connor, and those two are friends. Those two train together. They're good friends. He was 5th in the state last year, same as Connor Hare. He's number 2 in the state. It's been number 2 in the state. Him and Noah Teeter is going to be a number 2 versus a number 10 right out of the gate. Hayden Ward from Canton, been pretty consistent. Trevor Wyant from Chestnut Ridge, another one who's been very consistent, has a couple good wins under his belt. And then Eric Alderfer from Faith Christian Academy. He had a good power rate, but he didn't have escape the rock that I think he wanted necessarily. But he came back and got some revenge to win the Southeast region, where it was pretty stacked. You had Evan Mag and Jake Guilfoyle. He very easily could have ended up 3rd in that bracket, and he ended up winning that. I like Eric Alderfer to potentially get out and make it to the semifinals, and I really don't know who you would get. Carter Gill, I like him. Noah Teeter, I like him. Caden Wagner, I don't know. Really, those three I think are the three guys that are potentially going to come out there, but it's anybody's. I really don't know. I don't have a clue. I think Connor Hare is going to win it all. I don't see anyone beating him, but I don't know who he'd face in the finals.
I do like Carter Gill, and you said he shed 30 pounds from last year. Carter, hit me up on Twitter and send me your weight loss plan, because that's probably something that'll benefit.
Talk to his mom.
Bit.
His mom's a personal trainer, so she can help you out.
Well, maybe I need to get one of those. That probably wouldn't hurt. I do like Carter Gill. Saw him out at the Ultimate Warrior. That whole Hickory program I like, and they were down at state duels as well. He's a tough kid. He's a tough out. Clearly, being a regional champion, but that's a tough way to go. Carol Markle's had a strong year at Saucon Valley, and that team has run through the ringer in terms of their opponents this year. Like you mentioned, Noah Teeter and Caden Wagner. That's a great first round match that one of us is probably going to be watching to see what happens there. Hayden Ward to me is a bit of an X factor because he's a really funky wrestler. He likes to get himself in weird positions that you're not used to being in, but he's more than comfortable being in. That doesn't work when he gets to the upper level guys, like a guy like Connor Hare or Caden Wagner. They can kind of combat that funk a little bit. But if you haven't seen him before or wrestled him before, he can be really tough to wrestle. I do like Eric Alderfer coming out of this side of the bracket, though. He's been here before. He understands what it takes, and I think he's ready to take that next step.
Ty Watson is kind of the one I'm keeping an eye out for, because up until the postseason, he hadn't really wrestled any tough competition. There were some guys that were okay, Logan Carrick and Austin Mitchell and Callan Summers, but until the regional tournament, when he wrestled in the district tournament, Noah Teeter beat him 4-2 in overtime. That was his closest match. He beat Austin Foster, beat him up, pinned Chase Brandenborough, beat Chase Formella, pinned him, and then beat Trevor Wyant 7-0. He's the guy that I look at like he's dangerous, right? Of his 37 wins, he's got 28 falls. So I don't know exactly how he pins guys, but he's pinning a lot of guys. So that's a concern, right? But I think chalk is king here. I think Connor Hare is the guy, but on that bottom half, I really, between Wagner, Alderfer, and Carter Gill, I don't know. Take your pick. Who shows up, right? That's kind of the theme of the show here. It's kind of the theme of 152, because if there was ever a more dominant wrestler in the state, it'd be hard pressed. We have a couple here in Double A that are really good, but Jackson Arrington is one of them. Jackson Arrington has been nothing short of amazing in his career. Won a state title as a freshman, beat Cole Bisco. 3rd as a sophomore. Let's not forget who he finished behind. Ryan Crookham, Levi Haynes. Two guys that are pretty darn good. And then last year, he dominated his way to a state title. He's on the top half. Cooper Price from Wyoming area, 38-1, Mitch. Again, Wyoming area, maybe not the toughest schedule, but look at that first round matchup with him and Michael Dugan. Michael Dugan was third in the state last year. Cooper Price is a guy who spent some times at Wilkes-Barre and then came over to Wyoming area. He was a state qualifier last year. I think that's a really good first round matchup. And Michael Dugan, if you can keep up with his pace and you can frustrate him, he's certainly capable of being beat. And we saw that with Andrew Christie. Those guys have wrestled a handful of times this year and throughout their careers. So I'm looking forward to that match. But Jackson Arrington is the guy here. I like Carter Rude from Athens. One, it's a great name. I mean, that's a phenomenal last name, like Bearjar. Bearjar and Rude are two of my favorites. But he's got a nice match with Justice Hockenberry Folk from West Perry. And then you got Kane Kettering, the always dangerous senior from Reynolds, who I feel like has been around for 8 years. The top half, look, you're on the same side of the bracket with Jackson Arrington. That's a tough draw.
It really is, but I think you're going to see a Jackson Arrington, Michael Dugan quarterfinal match up there, which normally I would say would probably be pretty interesting, but I just don't know how interesting that's going to be.
It's a 1 versus a 3, so on paper it should be good, but Jackson Arrington is a very strong 1.
Yeah, I ran into Michael Dugan for the first time a couple years ago. I mentioned Montoursville wrestled Boiling Springs in that pigtail, and he beat the snot out of Isaac Corey on the year Isaac Corey went down and finished 7th in the state tournament. I think he major decisioned him in that dual meet, and it was like, who is this stinking kid? Because he was like 3 wins over 500 or something.
He's a Dugan.
Yeah. I mean, and it just, okay, then you keep an eye on the kid the rest of the way through, and he's been exactly who you expected him to be throughout the course of that. That's just a tough draw, for the first round for a kid that might be the second or third best kid, or fourth best. He's a top 4 kid in this weight class, and that's a tough draw off the opening gun. I think he'll beat Cooper Price. Cooper Price, I think, where's my notes here? He hasn't wrestled a state qualifier all season. He's only wrestled 2 regional qualifiers, one of which is Deegan Ross from Lackawanna Trail. So that 38-1 might be a little inflated, but the kid's talented. He wouldn't be here if he wasn't. I like Justice Hockenberry Folk. Seen him a couple times this year. That 13 losses can be a little misleading because they've wrestled some really good competition throughout the course of the year. And, we haven't talked a whole lot about Reynolds this whole season, and the team has taken a little bit of a step back. They don't have that top end talent that we've noticed in the past. But Kane Kettering's, if you don't know his name, you haven't been paying attention. This guy, like you said, it feels like he's been around forever. It's still Jackson Arrington and everybody else. That's just the reality of the situation here. And I think Michael Dugan might be the second best kid on that side of the bracket. It's just not going to play out that way with the way the bracket's laid out.
Yeah, the biggest question I have is who comes out from the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. Andrew Christie has been really good, really solid. He's got a couple big wins. In fact, he beat Dylan Evans, who's the number 1 ranked guy in AAA this year. Christie was just a really good wrestler coming up through, and he's proven to be just that. And I think he'll probably get Deegan Ross from Lackawanna Trail, and Connor McChesney from Fort LaBeouf has been good. You mentioned Kane Kettering. He handed Hunter Homan from Grove City his first loss of the season last week in the regional finals. Jack Moyer from Chestnut Ridge, another guy who's been pretty consistent, right? He's first time in the state tournament, but he has a loss to Carter Rude this year. And Tyler Barish, another one. I think that and Homan's a good match. Devin Deem, that is the guy that I want to see. Are you going to prove to everybody that you're as good as people think? Because he was 4th in the state last year. And I would say was a little surprised by that, personally, that he was able to get to that. But he was 4th in a weight where he lost to Michael Dugan in that 3rd and 4th place match, close match. Is Devin Deem now the guy here that's going to come out and challenge Jackson Arrington from that bottom half? I think if you were going to ask me, gun to the head, I'd say Christie and Devin Deem. It's going to be down to them two on the bottom half to have a chance to wrestle Jackson Arrington.
I think Devin Deem is a guy who's benefited the most from Denny Hare taking over that Montgomery program. Devin's always a guy who's been talented. His freshman and sophomore year, I think he lost in the blood round at the regional tournament. Denny has a way of getting his kids to wrestle with an edge. There's a meanness to it almost. It's not unsportsmanlike. It's not dirty or anything like that. There's just an edge to guys, and that's the thing that's kind of put Devin Deem over the top these last 2 years. And he's probably like he's grown the most from wrestling under Denny Hare. Andrew Christie obviously is a super talent there at 39-4 this year from Bishop McDevitt. He's a two-time state qualifier. I think he's sitting on just under 100 wins. In the opening tournament of the year, he had 2 wins over Gabe Belga, one over Dom Wheatley, and his loss that week was to Connor Hare, I think 3-1
Yeah.
in the semifinals. I mean, we know this kid can win at a high level. I think it's him and Devin Deem in the semifinals there, and that should be a barn burner because they're 2 kids that like to go.
So a guy here to keep an eye on, who I think has potential to sneak up on people, is Justin Ritchie from Quaker Valley. Quaker Valley has been very impressive this year. Justin Ritchie has been he's had some ups and downs. He actually beat Tyler Barish and then lost to him last week, but he's got a good draw here. I think he can beat Keegan Ramsey, and then I think he can beat Caden Kettering to find himself in the quarterfinals. And again, I think he could beat Hockenberry Folk or Rude to get to the semifinals, which could be a surprising thing for most people to see a Southwest 4th make it out to semifinals. But you heard it here first. Don't be surprised if it happens. On the
It's
bottom
funny.
half,
I kind of thought the same thing about Keegan Ramsey.
okay.
Too.
So, well, there you go.
Just because of the level of competition that they've seen this year, again, that 15 losses might be a little inflated, but that's a talented freshman who's kind of seen it all this year. I think either of those guys, Keegan Ramsey and Justin Ritchie, could be someone who makes a run out of that pigtail.
So let's make a run up to 160 pounds, where at the top is Grant McKay from Laurel. He's a returning state champion last year, won a state title, and this year he has been everything that we expected, right? As a returning state champion, he's been very, very good. He committed to Pitt. Pitt is just basically running through the state tournament here. They have all the biggest names. So Keith Gavin and company just doing a great job. But Grant was tested last weekend. He was tested in the finals against Zeke Dubler. It was a 1-point match. So, what does that say? I don't know necessarily. I don't think I want to read the tea leaves on that too much, but I do know that he could have a potential tough road, considering you got Caden Droege from Lancaster Catholic, Ty Nixon from Muncie, who I like, Gannon Smith from Newport. His only loss in the season was into the regional finals to Holden Garcia. Gannon Smith, he has a win over Michael Dugan. He's got, for a guy who was, I think 106, I think he was 106 or at least 113 as a freshman, where he's a state qualifier. This is his first time back to Hershey since his freshman year, when he was down at one of those lower weights. So, and he's got a tough first round matchup with Troy Bingaman from Mifflinburg, who's kind of been the odd man out in a tough Northeast region. Aiden Zimmerman from Johnsonburg. He's another one. He was at a state tournament, I believe it was 2 years ago. It was in 2020. He was a state qualifier. Last year didn't wrestle a whole lot of matches. And now he's finding himself as a Northwest regional champion here. So, and then there's Alex Alexander, who's also a returning state medalist. He was 6th last year, Pope John Paul II, and he was 6th in the Southeast region. That's to me kind of incredible, right? So could he end up coming out to the semifinals potentially? And that's just the top half, Mitch. Grant McKay struggled a little bit last week. Should we read into that, or should we be concerned, or are we thinking Grant McKay is going to make his way back to the state finals?
I never know how to read those close results. Whether it's somebody slowing the matches down, unless you watch it, you don't know. Unless you see it, you don't know. Because there's always an opportunity his opponents are slowing things down to keep it a one-move match. I don't know, not having seen it, but I know how talented he is. I mean, clearly being a returning state champ, the only state champ in school history, we know where he is in terms of his talent. Gannon Smith is the other guy I kind of had my eye on for kind of the same reasons that you said. He's got big wins this year. Justice Hockenberry Folk, Michael Dugan, Jacob Cherry, Luke Moore. Those are some big wins on your resume. Even in a tough bracket like this, I think he's somebody that could get himself into those semifinals and put an interesting match together against Grant McKay. Alan Alexander, the kid you mentioned from Pope John Paul II. He's another one I wrote down in my notes as, being one of those pigtail match guys that just upends the entire bracket by winning a couple matches early on. Who shows up that day? All these kids have the talent to make something happen. It's just a matter of who's going to actually do it.
You go down to the bottom half, and Robbie Schneider from Lackawanna Trail has been very quietly had a good season this year. And I said this at the state team tournament. Lackawanna Trail, I don't think I respected them nearly as much as I should have. And they came out and really impressed me at the state team tournament. And Robbie Schneider was part of that reason, right? And he beat a tough Ty Nixon in the regional finals. He's got a not so great draw, I would say, because I think Welsh and Gleesner from Bishop McDevitt are both tough guys that could cause him problems. But then you look at Zeke Dubler. I think he beats Vitaly Gentile from Reynolds. I think Zeke Dubler is the guy here that you kept it close with Grant McKay, but are you capable of winning a close match? I'd like that match with him and Robbie Schneider potentially. Holden Garcia. Let's talk about Holden Garcia. My gosh. Last year he came in, and I think 9 out of 10 people I talked to thought he was winning a state title, and he had a disappointing state tournament. He finished 6th, and a lot of people had him winning it. This year, he's had some ups and downs, but mainly more ups than downs. And I think that win over Gannon Smith in the regional finals was a good benchmark for him to say, I'm still one of the best in the state. I'm a nationally ranked guy. He's been nationally ranked for many years now. So is this his time now? And I think he's got a pretty decent draw. Luke Moore's tough. I'm not discounting the fact that he's a returning state medalist. He was 7th in the state last year. I like Luke Moore, but Holden Garcia's on a different level. I think he gets out to the semifinals without much of a problem, and I think he makes it to the finals without much of a problem, to be honest with you. I think this is a Graham McKay, Holden Garcia match here, a match that we thought we were going to see at the Powerade tournament, but we didn't. I think it happens here in the state finals, Mitch.
Yeah, and I agree. Holden Garcia he's another one of those guys that feels like he's about a 7th-year senior and he's only a junior. It just feels like he's been around forever. We've been talking about him forever. At this point, there isn't much he hasn't seen. There isn't a style that he probably hasn't seen at this point. He knows what he's going to get from just about everyone. Luke Moore, I kind of feel the same way about, though. He's had a match with Nolan Lear. He's wrestled Grant McKay this year. He's a returning state place winner. He's got, we know he has the talent. He's a key part of that Chestnut Ridge lineup. He's not going to be intimidated by wrestling somebody like Holden Garcia in the quarterfinals, and I think that could be a really interesting matchup between the two of those. I still like Holden Garcia to come out of here. I like Robbie Schneider because he did have a big win at state duels over Luke Moore, so we know that he can win on that level. Like you said, he's a quiet guy. You don't hear much from guys up in Factoryville a whole too often, but I think that was big for him to come down to the Northeast Regional last week and win that and beat Ty Nixon and take the gold medal there, just to keep showing people that he's capable of winning at that level.
I mean, and I'll refresh people's memory on why Holden Garcia was considered to be the guy to beat last year. He won a super region and he beat Nolan Lear in the he beat Bailey Gimber. He beat Nolan Lear and then he beat Bailey Gimber. And then at the state tournament, this is who he lost to. Avery Bassett in ultimate tiebreaker, 5-4. Nolan Lear, 2-1 in tiebreaker. So, I mean, and then he drops to Ryan Wyant, who he had beaten the week prior, so in the same tournament. So I think it was just one of those areas where he lost and he couldn't come back from it. I think this year he's refocused. You got to see him on a number of occasions. I think he's the guy on that bottom half, and I think him and Graham McKay is going to be an absolute war. I thought we were going to see it at Powerade, but it didn't happen, so hopefully we get to see it in Hershey on Saturday afternoon. 172 is another WPIAL wrestler, and his name is Rune Lawrence. You may have heard of him, Mitch. He won a state title last year. Boy, him and Malachi Duval went back at it. They went at it 3 or 4 times last year, and they were fun matches every time. Rune Lawrence, though, again, like Grant McKay, he had a little bit of trouble in the finals against Suds Dubler. Another solid name like Carter Rude, Suds Dubler, Bear Jar. I think Rune is maybe a little banged up, just based on some of the things I've heard. I can't confirm or deny that, but he's going to have probably one of the toughest quarterfinals because he's going to have Nolan Lear, who he did pin in the first period at Powerade, but Nolan Lear is a different wrestler than he was at Powerade. And it's hard to believe that he's here because he was second in Northeast, but he got beat by Garrett Garcia for the second week in a row. Mitch, what can you tell us about that Garcia-Lear kind of rivalry that we have there?
So I don't know that there's anybody whose stock has risen more in the last 2 weeks than Garrett Garcia that I can think of, because even after he beat Nolan Lear in the district final, it was kind of a fluky pin. It
was very fluky, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the proper term for it, if it's a fall from neutral, if it's a non-control fall, how you call it. I honestly don't know, but it was just a scramble where it actually looked like Nolan Lear was going to come out on top with a takedown, and Garrett Garcia was able to hold the leg and hook the head and got his shoulder squared up for the fall. And it was like, okay, well, let's see what happens when they meet again at regionals and they get into tiebreak, that's Nolan Lear's happy spot. You know, he is more than happy taking these matches to tiebreak and ultimate tiebreak. And he got an escape to go up 1 point, and in a spot where you thought they're just going to sit and go to the next round of tiebreak and trade their escapes, Garrett Garcia goes right at him, gets a takedown. And it changes the whole complexion of the match. Nolan Lear's got to cut him and try and get a takedown to tie it up. And it was, Garrett Garcia's stock in the last 2 weeks has risen really high, but Nolan Lear's a guy you just gotta fear when you wrestle him. He's so strong, he's so savvy, he doesn't panic. He's been in all these situations before. I watched the pin against Rune Lawrence, and it was a really weird half Nelson where he just rolled him right over the top of his head.
He made him look. It made it look like nothing.
Yeah, it was just brute strength. He just flipped him over the top of his head. I want to see those two go at it again. Nolan has a way of slowing these matches down when he needs to. He has a way of making adjustments. And I would think Rune Lawrence is still the favorite to win that, considering what happened in the first one. But that's a must-watch quarterfinal.
No doubt that's a must-watch, and he was pinned by him in 1:41, but let's not forget he also wrestled Gabe Arnold for Wyman Seminary, lost to him 3-1. That was a good match there. He can slow down. If you can slow down Gabe Arnold, you can slow down just about anybody. He also had a big win at the Midwinter Mayhem. He beat Tucker Hogan from Daniel Boone, that's his only loss of the season, is to Nolan Lear, and I like Tucker Hogan a lot. Nolan Lear looked really good in that match against him. He has a win against Isaac Corey as well, who bumped up to 89. So, and he also beat Dom DiAugustino from Interboro up at the Surge in the finals of the Surge, which was a good match as well. So, I like that matchup. I think the winner there is likely to make it to the finals. Not saying that Riley Parker, Garrett Teddemer aren't going to be able to hang, but or Brock Covell.
I don't think they're going to be able to hang.
Yeah, I just think the winner comes from that quadrant up there, Nolan Lear and Rune Lawrence. Brock Covell from Titusville is good, but the Northwest was not deep at all at 180 or 172 pounds. So the bottom half of that bracket, though, Garrett Garcia, him and Suds Dubler should be a phenomenal quarterfinal should they both be out there, because like you said, no one's stock has risen higher than Garrett Garcia's. Garrett Garcia comes in number 3, Dubler is 5. So think about that, Mitch. In the quarterfinal round, we're going to have potentially Rune Lawrence 1 versus Nolan Lear 4, Garrett Garcia 3 versus Suds Duber 5 in the quarterfinals. Those are some great matches. The guy who I thought had a great draw was Jake Jones from Saucon Valley, a returning state medalist. Last year he was 4th in the state, had a good postseason. I'm sure he wanted to have a better one, finishing in 3rd. He lost to a guy who had beaten before. So Jake Jones, though, everyone knows what he does, man. He's a freestyle Greco king, and that's a dangerous thing, but it also can backfire on you. So I think Jake Jones has a great draw. I think he makes it to the semifinals, and I'd like to see him and Garrett Garcia mix it up.
Absolutely. Garrett Garcia, I think it's easy to look at Garrett Garcia and say, well, he's just another Garcia. I don't think he's nearly as talented as Gavin and Gage were naturally. There's a lot of fight in this kid that makes him maybe a little better than he is from a talent perspective. And that's not to say that he's not talented, that he's not good, but he's got a different gear, a fearlessness about him that just makes him maybe wrestle above his head a little bit. But I really like Jake Jones, and I've seen him a couple times up at the Top Hat. He was up there. I really, truly believe when he got that fall over Garrett Teddemer in the finals of state duels, that put him over a different edge. Like that's a kid he had battled with, and he had been in some dogfights with, in a spot where he had to try and get some extra points, and he got a fall there. And maybe that just helped him relax a little bit and kind of let it go and figure out who he is as a wrestler. I mean, he's got 42 wins for the state dual meet champion. You know how good this kid is. But I think that was big in him really reaching the peak of what he's capable of being. I like Jacob Jones to come out of this bottom half of the bracket, but whether he gets Garcia or Dubler in the semifinals, it should be fantastic.
So I don't want to trigger you again, but I'm going to. At 189 pounds, we have a number 1 versus 2 on the same side of the bracket, just like we do in AAA. So Cole Karpinski, Greenville, 38-0. Last year came away with a state medal, was 6th. That was his 2nd trip to Hershey. This will be his 3rd. And also you have Patrick Kutchember. So Kutchember does not get any prestige points because he was 7th in the state as a sophomore. He was only a qualifier last year. Had a weird super region tournament last year. Cole Karpinski has been really, really solid. He came up to the Surge tournament and was a champion there. Looked really good, and he's just looked good since. There's a few wild cards here, I'll call him. Hayden Packer from Jersey Shore, another guy who's, I think, stock's going up in the last couple of weeks. Now, he did lose to Isaac Corey, but he's got a win over him as well. I look at Ty Sensitz from Saucon Valley as well as somebody who is kind of getting used to wrestling at 189, and he has been up and wrestling some of the bigger, slower guys, and now here he is down at 189 where guys just move a little bit quicker. Cade Werner as well, Connor Roblitsky from Wyman area. I don't know what to think of those Wyman area records, because I've seen some of the results, but I don't necessarily know how good they really are. Landon Caldwell is another one that I have circled as don't sleep on, right? State qualifier last year. He finished 4th in a pretty deep Northwest region. That Northwest region at 189 was insane. I wouldn't be surprised to see him beat Joey LaPena and then push Patrick Kutchember, but I think it's going to be a Kutchember-Karpinski semifinals. The question I have is who comes out on the bottom half. Mitch, what's your take on that top half? Because there's some District 4 Northeast regional flavor that I think needs to be addressed.
I mean, this goes back to the seeding. I don't know why we overcomplicate the seeding of these of the regional champions and these prestige points, that we make things more difficult than they need to be. Everybody's got to put in their seeding points for their first postseason tournament of the year. Why can't we just take those seeding points? I don't know how that would have changed things here. But we also need to have some common sense into these bracket draws a little bit. Is it 189 in AAA?
Yeah, Sonny Sasso maxed out.
Yeah, and that's just egregious, and that goes back to the argument that I said. Are we just trying to crown a champion, or are we trying to find out who the best kid is? This does nobody any favors on the backside too, because it's going to mess things up. It changes things on the backside of these brackets. That being said, this top side is still fun. Those Karpinski and Kutchember are the two favorites in this weight class. But Hayden Packer's a guy I've seen for 3 years now. He was a state qualifier 2 years ago, strong as a freaking bull. This guy's a two-time All-State linebacker. He knows how to get to legs. He's strong. He knows what he's doing. He can throw a wrench into some things. I like Connor Robleski. That record's probably a little inflated, but this is a three-time regional qualifier who finally broke through and got to the state tournament this year. Same thing, strong football kid, I believe, and is starting to get it. That match with Census in the first round, that's a must-watch match. That's a great match between those two. I like this top half of the bracket, but it's so heavily dominated with Kutchember and Karpinski in there that it's almost like, okay, well, we can talk about the other guys when they get to the back half.
Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part of the way that the brackets are determined. And I think at least at minimum we can start taking into account not just the previous years but previous experience as well. I think that's I don't know. I feel like that's an easy way to try to alleviate some of these issues. When I look at that bottom half, though, Jacob Scheib from Tri-Valley he's been good, right? But this is his third trip to the state tournament, first time looking for a medal. And you look at some of his results. Early in the year, he took a couple losses. Wayne McIntyre McKintry from East Stroudsburg North, who made history when he became the first wrestler in school history to make a state tournament. He got pinned by him. He got pinned twice this year by guys I didn't think necessarily would be able to pin him. Tucker Teets from Selinsgrove, who Tucker Teets is he's beaten some good guys, but Scheib is I'd say significantly better than him. So I'm a little confused by that result. And then you look at some of the other results. He beat Census in sudden victory up at top at 6-4. Owen Reed from Southwestern, he only beat him 5-3 in sudden victory, which that to me is a little head scratcher. And then you look at what he did against Cole Karpinski. He lost to him 5-0. So when you look at the bottom half, Mitch, do you think this is a Scheib's, is this going to be Scheib or is this going to be Isaac Corey who's up a weight? I don't know, but there's also some dark horses with Seth Stewart from Brockway, Brendan Morgan from Central Valley, Noah Ganebus from Mount Pleasant, Jackson Zimmer from Brookville. I really don't know what to expect on this bottom half.
Noah Ganebus is kind of the one that I'm most curious about because I just don't know anything about him, but I know his workout partner's Dayton Pitzer. So I don't care what kind of competition he sees during the season. It's not as good as the competition he sees in the room every day. I like Jacob Scheib. It's hard to pick against Jacob Scheib, but again, some of those results kind of leave me scratching my head a little bit because I don't expect those from a guy who's got 41 wins and has the pedigree that he has. I've seen Jackson Zimmerman a couple times over the years. I like Jackson Zimmerman. He's the long, lanky guy, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And that proves to be challenging. If you're a shorter guy and you got all those limbs flying around at you. I didn't really understand why Isaac Corey decided to make the move up to 189 for the postseason, not after wrestling all year at 172. And I think you had him third or fourth at 172 throughout the course of the season. And when he got hit in a lateral drop by Hayden Packer in the sectional finals, I really started to question. But when he settled in and you can see how strong this kid is and he's gone to a different pace this year. He used to like to slow things down, make things a one-move match. His energy, his pace this year has been fantastic. I just wonder if the size is going to run into a problem at some point this weekend. But I like him and Scheib to come out into the semifinals there in the bottom half, and don't be surprised if Jackson Zimmerman makes his way in there.
The Scheibs are like a staple in Tri-Valley. I feel like there's been 9 of them. Dan Scheib was a state champion from Tri-Valley.
His mustache was a state champ too.
Oh yeah, for sure. His mustache was really good. Sam Scheib from Tri-Valley. I'm sure there was some more that came in as well in the 70s or 80s, but I think he really looked good in the Southeast Regional tournament. My gosh, he looked good, and that's where I look at the recency bias, right? And looking at, okay, you what have you done recently? And he beat up Census in that match, and I think he's the guy. I think Corey, just like we talked about in AAA with Finnerty coming up weight, I think, giving up some weight at the state tournament is not always a smart move, right? And Shy beat Census 13-0, and I think the week prior he lost to him 5-3. So a flip switched, right? Something happened. So I like him to come out from that bottom, but I really think we probably could see the finals and the semifinals with Karpinski and Kutchember at 189 pounds. One thing I know for sure, Mitch, is the only question I have at 215 is Dayton Pitzer going to wrestle a full 6 minutes? I know that's a lot of pressure on a kid, but I don't know if he is, to be honest with you. I know that's a bold statement considering it's Dayton Pitzer, but I don't know if he wrestles a full 6 minutes here. He's just that much better than everybody in this bracket. I mean, Hayden Linkerhoff of Corey area, a guy who was number 2 in the state at the time at the Panther Holiday Classic, I believe it was. I was there. He pinned him like it was nothing. I think it was a second period pin. Dayton Pitzer's pound for pound, maybe the best guy in the state of Pennsylvania wrestling in high school currently.
Yeah, if we were doing a confidence pool of state champion picks, everybody would have Dayton Pitzer as their guy most likely to win a state title that you're giving your most points to, because it's, as much as we talk about Jackson Arrington and everybody else, Ryan Crookham and everybody else, this is Dayton Pitzer and everybody else in every other weight class. That's just how good he is. And I have seen Dante Mahaffey over the last couple of years. I've seen Bryce Rafferty. I've seen Nick Woodruff a lot. I've seen Brad Morrison quite a bit this year. I've seen Damon Backus, Jared Blobe. I've seen, most of the guys, in Mike Sips I've seen, most of these guys I've seen, and there's not anybody in this bracket that's at a Dayton Pitzer kind of level. I mean, it's him and then a big giant step downward to everybody else. And that's not a knock on everybody else. That's just how good Dayton Pitzer is.
Yeah, and what's interesting is even by losing an entire year due to an injury, he still has 96 career pins. So if he pins his way to a state title, he'll end his career with 100 pins in 130 wins. That's insane.
Is that good?
You wrestle 130 matches and you get 100 pins. You've won 30 matches not by pinfall. Like, get the hell out of here. That's
setting the video game on easy level and
right.
And just beating the snot out of everybody.
Exactly. That is just completely ridiculous. And that's not a knock again on the rest of the bracket, because these guys are all solid wrestlers in their own right. We're just seeing a generational talent. Brad Morrison, I think he is the guy on the bottom half that I got to see something from. He's got 130 wins in his career thus far. Hayden Linkerhoff not far behind at 125. But Brad Morrison, 2-time state qualifier. This will be his third trip there. Hayden Linkerhoff was 7th in the state last year. Had some bumps in the postseason in the District 10 tournament, which pretty stacked. You had Abraham Keep from Girard there. You had Bryce Rafferty from Brookville when they went to the Northwest region. And, I think that first round matchup potentially, if Vitaly Daniels, sophomore from Bentworth, all he's done is win and get to the finals. He's just been running into Dayton Pitzer for the last couple of weeks. I think if he wins, I think that could be a good match with him and Brad Morrison. I like Jonah Hauser too. Jonah Hauser has a win over Brody Klein from Lancaster Catholic, Berks Catholic, and I don't necessarily have a strong feeling either way between Linkerhoff or Morrison on the bottom half, but I wouldn't look past Vitaly Daniels to potentially sneak through with a chance to wrestle Dayton Pitzer for the third week in a row.
You're kind of almost left in the dark a little bit about Vitaly Daniels, just how good he is, because he's on the coattails of Dayton Pitzer coming into the state tournament. That's such a skewed result that you don't know how good he is. It's maybe going to take a couple matches to see just where his level is at right now. That's a good Bentworth program that puts kids in the state tournament all the time. So we know he's probably grown up and been kind of bred and groomed for this. The one guy in this whole tournament that they're in this whole bracket that I'm really interested in is Dante Mahaffey of Saucon Valley, because he spent almost all year wrestling up at 285 and he came down into this weight class, and I'm really curious to see at this level like what he can do in making a run, especially on if he gets to the backside.
Well, we just talked about like what 10, 11 weights where we're just littered with state medalists. 215, there's not a whole lot of them. Dayton Pitzer being one, Hayden Linkerhoff, but Dante Mahaffey is the other one here. He's just the third one in all 20 wrestlers that has a state medal to his name, so you can't discount that. He did have a loss to Brody Klein last week in the Southeast Regional. I still think he's more than capable, and you had talked about him coming down. You look at Vitaly Daniels. Last year, I remember this, he was at 285 last year, came into the postseason undefeated, went 0-2, and that was only 15 matches last year. This year, he's down at 215 for the entire year and has looked really good as a sophomore. So, again, maybe not the same exact comparison, but wrestling up a weight, it changes you a little bit, right? Also on the bottom half, Damon Backus from Mount Carmel had a good year. Kirk Bearjar, with a name like that, you're definitely gonna to scare people before you even come onto a mat. I don't think that there's too much debate about who's going to finish top 3 or 4 here. I think it's the 4 through 8. That's going to be really interesting because I could see like an Abraham Keep or even a Cale Black punch through or Jonah Hauser. That's the joys of having like a guy like Dayton Pitzer in a weight. It's really fun to see where the rest of the chips fall.
Absolutely, and I'm a big Nick Woodruff guy too. I don't think he gets talked about nearly enough, but he's kind of transformed his body a little bit and is just a bull at 215 pounds, and he's strong as an ox and any whatever other kind of strong animal you want to compare him to. He's just a ram, I guess, because Wyalusing's the Rams. But he's a guy I think can even get through Mahaffey or Rafferty on that quadrant of the bracket and find his way into the semifinals, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him in a top 5 spot.
So let's move up to the last and final weight class. We're at what? We're at 2 hours, so we're still ahead of schedule a little bit. I said 2:15. The number 1 ranked wrestler here, he's Riley Robel from Bishop McDevitt. He's a junior, and boy, he's really good. He's 36-1. Only lost to Jimmy Mullen at the Powerade tournament in the semifinals, who finished third at the Powerade tournament at heavyweight. He's going to have potentially a matchup with one of the only other returning state medalists in this weight. In fact, the only other guy with a state medal to his name, Emmanuel Ulrich of Mifflinburg. He was 5th in the state last year. Riley Robel pinned him in the state tournament. Then they went to sophomore nationals, and Robel beat him 1-0. It was pretty close. So these guys have a lot of history together, and we're likely to see it in the quarterfinals. And that's because Emmanuel Ulrich lost to freshman phenom Austin Johnson of Muncie. That's much like a Gavin Bradley and Brandon Wenzel. They flipped scripts from districts to regionals, and now we're seeing Emmanuel Ulrich on the top half. He's got Cam Carter Green from Washington, who's not an easy out. I think Cam Carter could easily win that match. I've seen Ulrich, and I've seen some chinks in the armor, but as of late, he's been wrestling really good. So I would say he's probably give him the edge. But Robel is the guy here. I think it's Robel, Austin Johnson, Emmanuel Ulrich, and probably Leo Mazuka and Matt Watkins. The rest of them are just, they're so inconsistent. There's so much inconsistency here where these guys have all beaten each other up. I really don't know if I can make heads or tails of it between the top big dogs, like we said, Austin Johnson, Riley Robel, Emmanuel Ulrich. And I would throw Leo Mazuka in that as well.
Yeah, I think there's some similarities with Robel and Ulrich. a little bit. These are two bigger guys that have a surprising amount of athleticism for people of their size. And we really saw Emmanuel Ulrich's athleticism come out when he was wrestling Austin Johnson each of the last 2 weeks. They got into some scrambles where this kid just he's quick. He's like a gymnast the way he moves around and scrambles on the mat. He understands how to use his size against somebody like Austin Johnson, who's obviously smaller than he is, coming up from 215. So I think there's some similarities between Ulrich and Robel, where that quarterfinal match, that's a state finals level match. And if you would have asked me 6 weeks ago, I would have said those two are destined to be in the state final against one another. The whole Austin Johnson moving up from 215 to 285 just threw a wrench into everything. We know how good this kid was. I think he was number 5 on your top incoming freshman for the year. How many time PJW state champion? Only one loss. That loss was to Ulrich in the district final. And that was the first time where somebody's size really gave him some troubles. More than anything, it wore him out. You know, Emmanuel Ulrich understood he had a hand on Austin Johnson's head for 6 minutes, pulling on the neck, pulling on the head, just pushing, pulling, whatever he had to. And it really wore him out. And the couple scrambles that they got into where Johnson had to, fight his way out from underneath, it took a lot out of him. And if he runs into guys like that, and I know he's wrestled Leo Muzica before, he beat him 9-3 down at the Hamburg Duels. That's what could give him the most problems. We know how talented he is. We know what he's capable of. He's got a man's body as a freshman. He's got man's strength as a freshman. But it's just about each match to match how the size difference is going to show up or how it's going to play out.
You look at common opponents for them, and as you mentioned, Robel's wrestled Muzica, and so has Austin Johnson. Austin Johnson beat him 9-3 when he was still a 215-pounder, and Riley Robel pinned him last week in the regional final. So, again, transitive property, but, that size difference. But Austin Johnson still, even giving up some weight, I still think he's a guy who just is so talented and just has lived on a wrestling mat for most of his life, right? He's just finds a way to win. I really would like to see a potential semifinal between Matt Watkins and Austin Johnson, because Matt Watkins is every bit of 285. And this is a guy who has been pretty high in the rankings. He's a 2-time state qualifier, has never come away with a medal. I'd like to see that matchup, but to be honest, I don't know who comes out from that bottom, quadrant. You have Finzenmeyer from Saucon Valley, who's coming up from 189 to 285. So, you're undersized, but you still finished third in the region. Like I said, outside of some of these bigger guys here, Xavier Rada from Corey area, I got to see him a few times. I like him, but Riley Robel is to me the guy here, and Austin Johnson's just the guy chasing Riley Robel.
I think it's a whole field chasing Riley Robel. It really is. I think he's been the number one guy all year. That hasn't changed. Everything behind him is kind of shuffled around a little bit. I like the confidence Austin Johnson has shown. It matters to him to do something that's never been done in the history of the Pennsylvania State Wrestling Tournament, which is to be a freshman heavyweight state champ. There's a long road to go to get to that point. Cade Sotolano from Williamson is a guy that's 270, 280 pounds. And that was a 3-1 match, I think, or 3-0 match when he wrestled Austin Johnson. Like you said, I like Matt Watkins too. That's a big dude. That's a lot of human being to move around. Gunnar Triblieb from Meadowbrook Christian is a guy who seems to have found his footing as to who he is. He's a 250-pound, 260-pound heavyweight who's got some athleticism about him and can cause problems for people. Leo Muzica, I know he's taken some losses to some of these guys, but that's a guy who's been a top 4, top 5 guy all year. This can shake out any number of ways, especially that bottom half of the bracket. But like you said, everybody's still chasing Riley Robel, and it's going to be that way all weekend.
So, and I think I failed to mention this, Xavier Rada from Corey area. I was really impressed with him at the Panther Holiday Classic. We streamed that match or those matches, and I can remember this match like it was yesterday. He wrestled Emmanuel Ulrich. He pinned him in 1 minute and 49 seconds, and I'm thinking, how did, because he it was back and forth, but he kind of controlled the match, and then he came away with a fall. He ended up winning the title, but then right after that, he got pinned by Ty Banco from Trinity, and then he lost to Josh Perrine from Sagertown. Lost to Perrine again. Then he lost to Mason Ludlow from Notre Dame Green Pond. So, he's took some losses, but he's been pretty solid the month of February. You pinned Emmanuel Ulrich. You're in the mix, right? And I think he's got a pretty great draw. I see him making out to the semifinals. So he could, again, depending on if he gets Ulrich Rebel, I think he's in that mix, and I think he makes himself a state medalist by making it to the semifinals.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, I think this can kind of play out a couple different ways. What Ty Fisenmeyer does as an undersized 285 will be really interesting. He's wrestled up at 285 this year. He and Dante Mahaffey have kind of flip-flopped as matchups have dictated there. This isn't just an interesting one because they're unlike the other weight classes we see. There is such a different combination of body styles at heavyweight and different styles of wrestling at heavyweight. Some guys want to be the dancing bears and wrestle 2-1 matches. Some guys we see, Riley Rebel, Emmanuel Ulrich, Austin Johnson, clearly want to get a little more athletic and use their quickness to them. So it's really an interesting contrast to styles all throughout this bracket.
Fisenmeyer has wrestled 182, 189, 215, and 285 this year. That's a pretty big spectrum, right? So I think that pretty much sums up 285. Mitch, 2 hours and 13 minutes, 14 minutes. We did it in. We did it just about the same amount of time we did the AAA in. I don't know about you, but my voice, I'm probably.
Two of us. We didn't need Dustin and Tom.
Yeah, we didn't need Jurassic Park Dustin or TED Talk Tom. Mitch and Jeff shows just fine, man. I can't wait to get to Hershey, Mitch. I don't know if I'm gonna have a voice by then. This is hour 6 of talking wrestling for me, but Thursday morning is gonna be one fun day, Mitch. I can't wait to be there beside you, Matt side. Just doing what we love best, and that's covering high school wrestling. So. That's going to do it for our AA state tournament breakdown. We have updated state rankings. We have updated projections on where we think guys are going to finish. We got interviews out the wahoo here. We got it all. I forget what Tom said, Jeepers something or other. He had some old man comment, and Dustin just loved it. So I was trying to be funny, but I'm clearly not because I'm tired. But Mitch, it's been a lot of fun. Tell Claudia we appreciated her being a trooper here. And, we hope you both have a really good night.
Hey, Jeff, I appreciate you just letting me, join the PA Power crew this year, because when I left the paper back in August, I wasn't sure how much writing I wanted to do, how much coverage I wanted to do. And you gave me an opportunity here to jump on and join you guys at PA Power and still get out and cover a sport that I really enjoy. I'm always a baseball guy through and through, but wrestling's always been a number 2 for me. So getting to my 22nd state tournament in a row this year, I appreciate, you just giving me the opportunity to do it, man.
And look, and the reason why you want to do it is because you want to piss off Tom Hausnick. You've been encroaching on him this past year for let's be honest, right? That's the real motivator.
More Brad Wilson, but Brad or Tom, either one,
All right.
If you get them riled up, it's a lot of fun.
I love it. Well, we'll be there for 3 days. We'll be going insane. We'll have just nothing to really be able to do come Saturday night. We'll have much brain power left, but we're going to try. I mean, I'm already struggling, and it's Tuesday, so I can't wait to be there. Mitch, thank you again for tuning in and sticking with us, and we will see you from Hershey. Talk to you soon.